I will call the meeting of the Environmental Services to order with the approval of the agenda. Motion made and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Approval of the minutes.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The same. Motion carried. Public, is there any public comments on anything that is not public hearing related?
Yep, Mr. Chair, there is one public comment.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My name is Doug Johnson from the Polk County Snowmobile and ATV Council. And I just would like to thank the Environmental Services Committee and all the staff for all of the long, hard work that went into the passage of last night's resolution 0221. Thanks again.
Are there any other public comments? That's it from the west, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Bob, do we have anybody online or?
Anyone that would like to make public comments? One more time.
Public comment?
Sorry.
All right. Seeing none, we'll close public comment. Just raise your hand later on if something comes up where there's a conflict. Do we have any other supervisors online?
Any supervisors online?
Okay. Forestry, Mark, you're up.
Good morning, everyone. I guess nothing you have to vote on or anything. This is information for you folks. First item is just the Forest Administrator Grant. I will be applying for that, sending it off today. As you remember, that pays half of my salary and 40% of my fringe benefits. Last year, we received $42,138.44. This year, due to basically I changed healthcare plans from single to family, so that wasn't applied last year. So this year, the DNR will be doing a reimbursement. We should have got more money this year. So they'll be adding on to this year to make us whole. So this year, I'll be applying for $49,255.16. That will go out today. So when you guys approve the work plan in November, that's what this is all about, to kind of set my priorities, what I'm working on. And also it makes Polk County eligible for this particular grant. So if you're approving that in November, this is what that's all about. The second thing, I'll be paying either today, get it in the system today or tomorrow, would be the 30% severance paid to townships. So again, that's paid out per the gross receipts of timber sales from the Polk County Forest, the gross revenue. We take 30% of that, and it goes out to the townships where there's actual county forest land. The payment, the 30% is taken, take the number of acres in each township and create a percent of ownership in each township, and that is how the payment is distributed. So, any questions on those two items? Okay, thank you.
You don't need a motion or anything to move it forward? Okay.
The severance is already in resolution, and the first administrator grant, you guys kind of approved that when you approved the work plan.
Yes. Do you have a total of what's going out to the towns, not per town, but just a total of?
The total will be $34,790.31.
Is that down considerably?
Last year, we paid $56,635. In 2019, we paid $75,182.
So it's cut more than half in 2 years, realistically. Okay.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Yep.
since we have a few minutes before the public hearing, you might want to meet the new member or have him introduce himself, if that's all right.
Go ahead and introduce yourself, Justin.
I don't know if everybody knows it.
Justin Wood from Clear Lake. I'm on the FSA committee, so that's how I landed here. We have a farm down in southeastern part of the county. Corn, soybeans, turkeys, beef. Glad to be here and looking forward to it.
Good to have you, Justin. You got anything you can do in like 4 minutes, Bob? Huh?
I believe we could do 8B in about 4 minutes or less.
Okay.
Um, All right, so you're on 8B now. It's the resolution for the town of St. Croix Falls to amend their zoning ordinance number 1. This amendment has a lot to do with various special exceptions that they would like to add, like tax in relationship to campgrounds and a racetrack and a heliport. The town board did approve this after they had already received approval from the plan commission at the town level. Because they are within Polk County, they have to take and get approval from the county board and that to make sure that they're in line with the county's comprehensive plan. And so I don't see any problems with approving of this. This is just an ordinance amendment, not a map amendment. So with that, we could take a motion and that to approve and recommend to the full county board and that approval of their amendment.
I make a motion, we approve resolution 0821.
Motion's been made and seconded. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, the same. Carried. Well, Bob, he was so fast, you still got 4 minutes. I don't think, there's nothing on here we're going to get done in 4 minutes, is there? Okay. Let's just take a 4-minute break until 9:15. See if you got us off.
in the newspaper for a hearing date of today. The application in that was filed in December. The property has recently been rezoned from residential Ag 5 to Ag 10. And that was approved by the county board in December of 2020 as well. With that, Bob, can you pull up the GIS map? All right. So the property in question is right here. This is Poplar Lake. A mile north here is Highway 8 going across. This here red line, that is the north boundary of the town of Osceola and the south boundary of the town of St. Croix Falls, so it's right on the border. Dragonfly Gardens has some orchard here, and that their main complex building is over here to the north and the east. This picture was taken in 2015. You can see that there's just some frost walls on the property, but that gives you an idea where the building is located. It is a conforming building for the setbacks. There's a drainage ditch that comes down through the northwest corner of the property. And then there is a new stormwater pond, which is about right there on the property. So just kind of to the southwest of the building. There's no floodplain on this property. In 2015, that building and that you can kind of see on the map there was permitted as a 4-bedroom dwelling. The total square footage of the building is 8,648 square feet. It has a 4-bedroom mound sanitary system on site. The soils are quite heavy in that area. The town approved of the rezone and had some suggestions for conditions in case a conditional use permit application was ever received. We received those comments last night, and I believe all you guys were copied on the email for that. The stormwater pond that was completed may need to be enlarged if there's additional impervious surface added to the property. And there is a campground, which is another commercial use to that, just to the south of Poplar Lake here. This is all single-family homes. This 9.7 acre parcel here is vacant right now. So, and then there's no house on that property either for quite a ways. So, yeah, so in other words, it's kind of surrounded by 3 vacant parcels. With that, we can get into some of the pictures. No, I think it's photos.
Yes? Oh, sure.
So in this picture, I'm standing on the driveway of the property. You can see there's a street sign here for 120th Avenue. This goes, and that to the east, that would go up to Dancing Dragonfly Winery. This is going north. Literally right at the pines there, that's basically the town cutoff. And you can see the color in the pavement changing.
As I'm sharing it, I don't know if I can turn it.
You see all photos up there in the left-hand corner? That was picture number 1, so it went to 59.
59.
Again, standing on the driveway, this is a better picture of the intersection. This is going to be Dragonfly Winery right there. the winery has a bunch of orchard in that right behind this large power pole. Kind of going that way. There you can see a picture of that. This will be looking directly east. This is looking to the south.
Oh, sorry.
This would be looking to the south towards Poplar Lake. You can see that there is a curve in the road down there. These pine trees here are basically the property line, the south boundary. You can see this little hump right here. That's their mound sewer system. Again, here's the mound. So those pines are the property line. Can I show you? There's the building that was constructed. This is the driveway going in. These pines here are basically the north property line. Overall, you can see in this picture and that everything is pretty flat out there. Just a slight grade going towards the west. Now I'm back by the building and I'm facing directly east. And that dancing dragonfly would be up here in that on the left-hand corner. This area here is where the applicant has proposed some parking. This is that field again. Here's their mound back here. Pines are the property line. That would be the parking area if it's approved. This is the very north side of the building. This whole area here has not been finished in the inside. This is looking directly northwest and that, so this would be the north property line here and going back to the edge of the woods. This is the west side of the building. The stormwater pond that was constructed when they built the property is right there. That little area. The property line is just back here, so on the right-hand side. This part of the building is more just an open pole shed in the inside, but it has been finished with pole barn steel on the inside. That's this part right here. I believe that was one of the exhibits in that you guys received, and that was the photos of that in the inside. This is kind of the southwest side. So this would be the south side of that big part of the building. This is the south side of that part that I said was finished. This is looking towards the southwest. Stormwater pond is right off to our left here. You can see that the property line is right there on the tree line. There's the stormwater pond. This would be kind of facing southeast, their mound system. This is the back side of the Williams property. And here is the pond. Looking directly east from back by the pond. This is the well right there. Right there, that's the well for the property. Basically, it's just a show right now. It's been empty in that since 2015, 2016 when they completed the show. These are the sewer manhole covers right here for the mound. These are some inside pictures, the best I could get them, peeping through the windows. This would be looking to the north. You can see in that just a vaulted ceiling room. If this was to be approved as a conditional use permit, the town building inspector or the commercial building inspector would be the one that would ultimately determine the maximum occupancy for this area based on the space and the size of the bathrooms and how many stalls are in the bathrooms. That picture. Another one. Everything's roughed in. That's how it all looks right now. I should point out in that the current applicant was not the property owner when this was being built. And that it was a previous property owner that ended up just walking away from this building. So. Yep, that's it. That's what I've got for staff report.
wrote down, when you discussed the mound system, I think you said it was designed for a 4-bedroom. Is that going to be adequate for an event center, or I don't know how they figure that.
So in a 4-bedroom mound system, and that is a state-approved sewer system. All mounds are, and that we don't have the authority to approve them in-house as a county. And it's designed for 600 gallons per day or 150 gallons per bedroom. And so when it comes to the sewer system, what we would want to do is if the committee was going to grant this request, and that we would want to make sure that we find out what the maximum occupancy of that building is going to be when it's finished by that commercial inspector. Take that, and then we have underneath the state sanitary code, we have different gallons per day and that for like event centers, and we would calculate that and see if it's 600 or less. If it is, they're able to continue in that and not have to do any improvements to their sewer system. If it's not, then they could end up, adding another tank and adding onto the mound, and that in order to make it large enough to handle the amount of people and that they're going to have there. So right now, that number is unknown, but that would be simply a condition in that you have to put on.
So just a follow-up to Doug's question, I mean, that would be determined by the town or the commercial building inspector, whoever, and then when that number come back to staff, you'd punch the calculations and say it's big enough or it's not big enough, and make it bigger if you want the conditional use permit.
Being that it's never been used, it would be really easy to add on to that mound and actually make it longer, and they could simply set another tank, and that to take an add-on. So that would be how they'd have to do it. When we start talking commercial uses like this, the state has a big table with saying, that like an employee at a restaurant or any factory or anything like that, you would size a sewer system for 13 gallons per day for that employee. So those are all set numbers by the state. It all varies depending on the type of use that it turns out to be. One thing that we do know is that the applicant is not planning any food preparation or cooking facilities in this building, which helps out dramatically because as soon as you do commercial food prep, and that they call them BODs, get to be highly concentrated, so there's high strength waste, and then we have to take and have a much more complex and much more expensive sewer system to deal with the fats and the greases. In other words, this is pretty simple, and that it's just for normal people use.
Any other questions for Jason?
I don't think so.
Okay, thanks, Jason. The applicant is here.
Yes.
I think we'll just have you go up there. And
We'll say one thing, and that the applicant has brought with a handout that I provided you all before. That has been added as an exhibit, just so you guys know. That's Exhibit 29. And then the public notice had a closing of 10 o'clock yesterday morning to send out the things. But since then, we've got 2 maps, and that are the floor plan of the building. We've got 3 letters of support, and we've got 1 letter from the town of Osceola, and then we've got 1 letter of opposition that was submitted after the time frame. Those are all in the file, and then if you guys would like to see any of that stuff, I can definitely provide that.
And this is what the applicant provided.
That's Exhibit 29 now, and besides the 22 exhibits that I emailed you yesterday.
Yeah.
All right. I wrote this down so I can stay on track. Hello, I want to introduce myself. I am Andrea Gray. My husband and I recently were married at a wedding venue in Polk County. By going through this process, we found that we both have the vision to own and operate an event center / wedding venue. When we found the Red Barn outside of St. Croix Falls, we both agreed that it was perfect. The St. Croix Falls area is a beautiful location for a wedding or a celebration. Being located roughly an hour away from the Minneapolis-St. Paul area allows guests to get out of the busy city for the weekend. For visiting guests, there are several options for lodging, such as the Holiday Inn, Poplar Point Rentals and RV Park, Airbnbs, and VRBO houses to rent. When planning our own wedding, I was able to make relationships with several vendors. When planning our wedding, we used several Polk County vendors such as bartenders, hair and makeup artists, photographers, shuttle, lodging, and rental equipment. All of which were a dream to work with. These people and businesses are part of why we chose the St. Croix Falls area. I know there has been so much talk about our plans for the Red Barn, and I'd like to set the record straight what our vision is. Our vision is to be very similar to the other 8 events and wedding venues in the area. The Red Barn will not be open to public. The only time it will be open will be for scheduled private showings to interested clients and when hosting private booked events. Our focus will be weddings and celebrations. I'm going to assume that many of you have attended a wedding and can agree these celebrations typically happen on a Saturday, with a rare few on Friday and Sunday. As a couple that is attempting to start a new business, it is very important that we are competitive, and that's why we're asking for Friday and Saturday hours of operation to be 8 a.m. to 12 a.m. Sunday hours of operation 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. I've done my research and I have attached a spreadsheet of 8 venues in the area that host weddings, and all of those places wrap up at 12 a.m. Alongside weddings, we would like to utilize this building and its space for meetings, gatherings, birthday parties, company parties, and similar functions. This is why we're asking to be permitted to have up to 4 events per week. During the week, we are limiting operational hours to 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. Lastly, there are questions I have been asked that I haven't been able to answer because we haven't started construction as we awaited zoning and the conditional use permit hearings. Questions regarding our parking lot. We have talked to Polk County Land and Water Resources and will continue to do so and follow their guidance as we move forward. As we start and complete construction inside the building, we'll be working closely with Ben Campbell, the building inspector, to make sure proper permits are in place and max capacity works with our available space and septic system. Thank you for taking your time out of your day to hear this. We are hoping today that we can set conditions that allow us to operate a successful new business, support surrounding Polk County businesses, and all the while respecting the surrounding areas.
Thank you.
Any questions for the applicant right now? All right, thank you. We have some upstairs, Bob.
Mr. Chair, we do have some comments upstairs.
Yep.
First up. Name and where you live, please.
Yes, Mary Ann Mugg.
Just a second, Bob, can you pull up their room so we can?
We are the presenter now.
We good to start?
Not yet. We're still waiting to get the video feed from your room pulled up.
Sounds good.
Okay, Ben, we're ready.
Okay, go ahead.
Good morning, Mary Ann Mugg, 2078 120th Avenue. I live kitty corner across from the Red Barn. Thank you for hearing us this morning. I have sent you public comment that compares the Dancing Dragonfly Winery with Gray Event Properties and shown you the differences. So I'm just going to hit those highlights. The Dancing Dragonfly has their events building on 6 acres inside of their agricultural area that is zoned commercial, appropriate to their business. Grays have a residential building zoned A1 agricultural. The Dancing Dragonfly has a location reasonably distant from residences. Not so with this application. They employ 50 people, not so with the Grays, and the liabilities do not outweigh any community, the liabilities outweigh any community benefit. The Dancing Dragonfly hosts 8 to 10 weddings per year. They're proposing 3 to 4 per week. Alcohol is served till 9 p.m. at a winery by state law. Noises end at 10 p.m. at the Dragonfly. And the ingress and egress to their property is safe. They use a looped driveway with a separate entrance and exit, and they are on a quieter road. So even though they increase some traffic in the area, their general area is protected. To place an event center on A1 zoning is to ignore the definition that the zoning administrator told you would allow this use. This CUP application does not meet any of the requirements in the language under point H on page 27 of the Polk County Comprehensive Land Use Ordinance. That wording is other similar and compatible agriculturally related business. Similar? This business is not similar to nearby use cited by the zoning administrator. You can refer to the table that I just summarized for you. Compatible. Compatible with what? With agricultural business? No such business has been proposed. Compatible with the neighborhood? Certainly not. 67 people from 40 households have signed a petition stating that an event center is highly incompatible with their daily family life. Agriculturally related business. No such thing proposed here. Just because a building is big and red doesn't make it agricultural. When this committee heard the zoning application in December, comment was made that another event center had been allowed elsewhere in the county. Whatever criteria were met for their conditional use, that was a separate application and has no bearing on this one and is irrelevant. You must apply due diligence to the application before you, regardless of previous decisions. It appears that this project has been shepherded from the county level for reasons not clear to the public, and wiggle room is being applied to the language of the zoning description. Words matter, and to stretch definitions is to misrepresent the written rules to get what you want. The constituents are against this use, and yet the county has plowed ahead, disregarding what is beneficial, compatible, and true. Please consider denying this CUP application. It is simply not what your zoning definitions allow. Thank you for your time.
Good morning. My name is Tom Williams. I live 2077 120th Avenue, Dresser. My property is immediately adjacent to 2075. And I'm here today to voice public comment and recommend to the Environmental Services Committee that the application for this conditional use permit be denied, if for no other reason than what we're hearing today is that there are simply too many unanswered questions. It's my understanding that as an applicant for a conditional use permit, they have to satisfy a list of criteria set forth either by zoning or by this Environmental Services Committee. I heard no argument today from the applicant that satisfies that list of very specific criteria. I have submitted my formal comment via writing, but that list contains the maintenance of a safe and healthy conditions. What qualifies as safe and healthy conditions as it pertains to this property, when at this point we don't even know the occupancy that the building can hold? I do feel though that as part of that safety for our community, for their occupants, it is unfinished, and at the very least, some sort of fire suppression system should be added to that building. Item number 2, creation of increase of smoke, dust, noxious or toxic gases orders, noise and vibrations from heavy equipment. It's a concern of ours of noise. Well, that may not be from heavy equipment, certainly from bands, DJs, vocalists. We know it's been discussed and different levels, decibel levels have been discussed, but again, there's no escaping the base. Vehicular traffic and increase of traffic is number 3 on your list. By now, you've heard plenty of testimony from the township, my neighbors, myself, as far as the traffic conditions on that stretch of 208th Street in the township of St. Croix, as well as 120th Avenue in Dresser. So I'm not going to bore you a lot with that, but I do want to make point to the township's minutes from last week, as well as their recommendation to you. The next 3 items I kind of lumped together: the prevention and control of water pollution, existing topographic and drainage features, and the location of the site with respect to floodplains. Back in 2015, when this structure was being built, a retention pond was illegally dug without permit. There was never a declaration from the builder as to whether this was a commercial or residential build, and they took advantage of that gray area to their advantage. The only thing we knew at that time, the permits were pulled as a 4-bedroom residence. I would like to read to you November 18th, 2015, a letter from Scott Geddes, environmental engineer here at Polk County Land and Water. He issued a letter to the owner, Mrs. Walsh, and to the contractor, Nelson Construction Services, informing them of the violations and possible remedies for the holding pond. I'd like to read to you just a couple of things from his letter, and I've also submitted this letter to you. In the violation section, section 6B1D, Scott Geddes says, is a land disturbing activity that the Land and Water Resource Department determines is likely to cause an adverse impact to environmentally sensitive area. Scott goes on to say that this apparent stormwater pond has been almost or completely full since it was installed, and the color of which indicates a high level of sediment-laden water that is being discharged into surface waters. This, combined with recent rains, topograph has caused the pond to overflow and is now encroaching on adjacent properties. I also included photos of that subsequent flooding that Scott mentions in his letter. Jason this morning did acknowledge that there is a major drainage on the west side of this property leading directly into Poplar Lake. Again, we're talking about now putting an impervious surface or a non-impervious surface that could potentially pollute the surface water that will run directly into Poplar Lake. So I lumped those together. One of the other of requests that they need to specifically address and satisfy on their permit is compatibility with adjacent land. I would like to stress that word adjacent. This is zoned, our neighborhood is zoned at A5, is primarily residential and agricultural. The lands to the north are agricultural, the land to the south being mine and my neighbors are residential, and that's the use that the adjacent lands are being used for. You just heard argument from my neighbor that the argument of being compatibility due to a winery down the road doesn't make sense. Another one on your list, the amount of septic waste to be generated and the adequacy of the proposed disposal system. We all know this is a 4-bedroom mound system. We don't know the occupancy of the building. We don't know if it will be satisfied. Again, it's another unanswered question. Therefore, I ask that again, the CUP be denied. Different location factors, as you all know, we said it, it's a residential area and is not compatible with our neighborhood. So I guess just in conclusion, I'd like to thank the committee for taking the time to hear our public comment. And we trust that you make the best decision for our county and our township, and in particular, my neighborhood. Again, all my information has been submitted, including that letter from Polk County Land and Water, as well as pictures of flooding. And please consider those environmental impacts on our neighborhood. Thank you.
Good morning. Tom's a tough act to follow, but my name is Ron Nelson. I live at 2071 120th Avenue. And I believe there are many cons for this project. Having up to 300 people or events in a pretty large for our small area. Live music until 12:30 a.m. Sound carries far around here. This is blatant disregard to the feelings of the residents. If this project appeared on any of the board members on this committee neighborhood, it would have never made it this far, back and forth from Osceola to Polk County. Obviously, the residents do not want this event center in their neighborhoods. A few of you sit and decide the fate on how the rest of us can live our lives. Your decision just is not right. Who's really benefiting from this? Take a good look at the road structure around this area. In time, the streets will need to restructure. Is that going to fall back on us as assessments? Our property taxes are increasing every year already. Think about the disastrous effects this could have on nighttime driving and people under the influence. Will property values decrease? Nobody wants to buy a house near this event center. Summers are short. It's nice to be outside and also have the windows open in the summer. The loud music and events will certainly keep us from enjoying our summers. We moved to this neighborhood in 2004 because it was quiet. Our plans were to retire here. At our age, it's unthinkable to move and take another mortgage out. But if this center passes, our plans are to move. I could hardly come into somebody's neighborhood and make the area so upset that people would move. Hopefully you all can retire without such problems in your lives. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Cherie Kotelnik, and I'm representing Cherie and Steve Kotelnik, who live at 2112 Poplar Lane, Dresser, Wisconsin, 54009. I'm also representing the residents of Poplar Lake and the Poplar Lake Association, 52 of which signed a petition in opposition to this project. I was disheartened to hear the presenter of this whole project talk about the letters of support for this project and not identify the magnitude of the letters in opposition to this project or the petition in opposition to this project. It makes me feel like someone has something to gain from this project going forward other than the owners. We are also the owners of Chevin Properties, which owns 3 properties on Poplar Lake and owns 4 commercial properties. So we're familiar with building ordinances, with septic systems, with shoreland zoning, with things like that. In every case, when we have built properties, we have followed the shoreland zoning protection ordinance. My husband has been on Poplar Lake for 60 years in one way or another, and I've been on Poplar Lake for 40 years in one way or another. It matters to us. The quality of that lake matters. The letter that I just saw this morning to Carol Walsh from the Polk County Land and Water Resources Department indicates that there were problems identified with this property build early on and that they were never resolved. As an owner of a property, it would seem like if there were unresolved issues, I would have to disclose those to the new buyers. I'm not sure why this didn't happen. As a public administrator, I would think that I would have to enforce the unresolved ordinances to the new owners if the old owners hadn't resolved those. Now we have new owners who want to expand the use of this property and to do it in a way that has not addressed the unresolved issues or identified any new issues that might come up with the increased usage. I also raised concerns about the definition of this project in relation to the CUP allowances. According to your statute, agriculturally related businesses such as feed mills, commercial stables, implement dealers, agricultural cooperatives, veterinarians, wineries, so agriculturally related businesses are allowed to apply for this CUP. Kennels, when at least 800 feet from the property lines, are allowed. Animal shelters, when at least 300 feet, are allowed. Junkyard salvage yards are allowed. Airports, airstrips are allowed, and large outdoor commercial events. This applicant, in testimony last week to the dresser, to the Osceola Township, said that this would all be primarily indoor events, and that and they were saying this in response to the concerns raised by the adjacent residents, which I would certainly share if I was an adjacent resident. So it certainly wouldn't meet the definition of large outdoor commercial events, and it doesn't meet the definition of any of the other events that are allowed for the CUP. So for that reason, I would say deny this application, or at the very least, get additional information that assures us that this entity that's planning on a business is going to comply with the water and shoreline zoning requirements, is going to get information on what the septic system requires, and is going to agree to comply to that information, and then could responsibly go forward with this project. So I would put this on hold until more information is gained for this project. At the very least, if I were sitting on your committee, I would deny this request. Thank you.
Any other public comments? Mr. Chair, that's it from the west.
Okay, thank you, Ben. Do we have anybody online or anything, Bob?
Yeah, I can open it up to everybody to see if anyone is. I'll go down the list individually. Supervisor Middleton, do you have any comments for your public hearing?
Hi, everybody. Can you hear me?
Go ahead, Supervisor Middleton.
Hi, thanks. I think this CUP needs a lot of analysis. I think you should take a pause and sort of digest. I didn't see what the town of Osceola submitted. I didn't, this whole piece about we can't set the mound and understand if our septic is going to be adequate until we know the numbers. That should be all wrapped together in the bundle. I mean, we should know those numbers that are the max. So we set a max capacity and then we connect that to the mound, not leaving it hanging. I'm not sure if I understand the process correctly, but I think I was understanding what Jason was saying is that we can't connect that until after the permit is given. So I think that that water quality piece needs to be tied together. So I just want you guys to really analyze this. I think it's had enough kind of questionable processes throughout the whole years that it's been vacant and being developed. So I want you to really look carefully at this. So thank you.
Anybody else online? Are they open, Bob, to?
I'm thinking I'm going to go down the list.
Okay.
Brandon Whitaker, do you have any comments regarding this public hearing?
Can you hear us, Brandon?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah, I got no comments. Thank you. I appreciate everyone who's taking the time to review this today.
Okay.
Caller, do you have any public comments or public testimony for this public hearing? Chairman Nelson, do you have any testimony for the public hearing?
You know, the one, I don't, but I will add one comment that could be for the record. I did build the building for people, for a residential building. The comments that I've heard was there's an illegal pond built by us with that letter. We had nothing to do with the site grading sewer system. We were just hired to build the building itself, the home. The building home, unfortunately, the reason the building stopped being built was the homeowner committed suicide, and that is why the project stopped. So I just, very unfortunate for the family. We never did any more work after that. And the homeowner do that site work, and they did do some grading. And all I know is it was always designed as a residential. It was no intention to build a commercial building there on our part.
Greg Marston, do you have any testimony for the public hearing? Mr. Jim Berg, do you have any testimony for the public hearing?
You hear us, Jim?
Mrs. Lisa Dorr, do you have any testimony for the public hearing? Any other callers have testimony for the public hearing? Any other callers have testimony for public hearing? Chairman Olson? Everyone.
So I'm new at this, Jason. The applicant gets to respond to anything that's been said, right?
I think I just want to address, like they talked about capacity. Our idea has always been max of 300. We will go forward and talk to, like I said, Ben Campbell about what that building, once it's finished, what it's set for. If it was set for, say, over 300, we're never going to cross over 300. That's not what we're trying to do. It's 200, that the capacity of the building floor, but also with the septic system, we're going to do 200, 250. And that is something that before we even go forward to have anyone in that building, that will be addressed. We do have the plans to build, but like I said, we have waited until this was completed. We didn't want to start anything before we finished. The other side is the pond, talking to Land and Water. If we are looking to put like a gravel parking lot, that's one of the conditions. I know that's what we talked about. I talked to Land and Water. They said the pond right now would need to be expanded. That's something we do as well. So we're not taking any of these decisions lightly before we make any changes. We're talking to all the right people, including Brian Hobbs as well when it comes to catering, coming to having an efficient setup for food. Like you said, we're not going to have any food prepped there, but we are going to have caterers come in, and the right license and inspections will be done as well. I think a lot of the neighbors have had concerns about what's going to happen around them, and I know a lot of the conditions we've come up with that you're here today. We're trying to minimize this, not trying to make this a unhappy place for people to live. So I hope we can come to some sort of compromise where we can work together and not affect as many people, such as putting a driveway in for traffic, using signs, putting a fence up on the south boundary, all these things that we want to work with you guys. We want to work with the neighbors. So that's all I have to say. Yeah.
Will we close the public hearing at this point, Jason, or? Okay, so at this point, we will, at 10:06, we will close the public hearing on the Gray Event Center.
Any questions for staff? Yeah, go ahead.
You said that last night you got the letter from the town. Do you have a printout of that so we can look at it?
Two copies.
I have a copy, Jason.
Anybody else need a copy?
Up to 22 and then this.
Maybe I should just take
anything else you're going to hand out?
Nope, that's it. So what I handed out there was Exhibit 28. That's the letter from the town of Osceola.
Did you have the girls make
No, I
some of
didn't.
these?
Okay, sure. Why don't I go and make a couple?
So, Corporation Counsel, would it be appropriate to just take a break for 5 minutes so everybody could look at this, the letter from the town of Osceola, while we're not necessarily in session?
Absolutely. Once we come back, I just wanted to address a couple of the legal questions that were raised during comments, so I can address those if you'd like me to do that when we come back.
Okay, let's take we'll come back into session at 10:15, so 7 or 8 minutes so that we can get this paperwork and take a look at it. So we'll stand adjourned until 10:15.
Oh, yeah, and we're making some right now, so, yep.
I'm reading it right now.
Oh,
Vince
gotcha.
does and Malia. Tracy, do you mind? One for Vince
Yeah,
and Malia,
yeah.
they're looking for one.
That's good. Oh, I better leave Jason.
I'll take it.
There's one for you.
Oh, no. We take the recommendations.
Sharon, you got a copy?
No, I don't obligate it right now. Thank you.
Yes, I do. And I think they left one for Doug already, so.
You got one? Doug's got one. Who else is here? Who's here?
Nobody. I don't, yeah, no, I think that's Jason's stuff. You get a copy.
Would you like a copy? I read it a little
And
bit.
the documents that came with it, I thought I had it in mine. It's like 4
Do you want a
pages.
copy? No.
I thought I had it, but apparently it's not.
It's not in the packet.
It's not in, well, I don't have a big packet like that. but-
From highway.
Maybe print out 3/4 maybe.
Oh, gosh. It's pretty intermittent and sparse. I don't know, from Highway 8 to the town line, maybe.
You know, I've never been down that road.
I drive it all the time when I go to Tolaga, but I'm just like, it's like automatic pilot.
I drive it every day I go to my daughter.
Yeah, there's not a ton of houses on that road.
No, there's one house, the one guy that's lives right next door to it. And my grandson goes over there to play, so I've dropped kids off there before. But
I gave you your original copy back, Jason.
other than that, there's not anything full.
So it's more behind
Okay, we're on, Bob? Okay, we will call the, back in session on the Gray public hearing for the event center.
So over the break, and then we provided everybody with a letter from the town of Osceola that we received last night. And then also exhibits 23 through 27, which were the documents that were supplied last night or today. And then exhibit 29, and that is the exhibit that the applicant had brought today addressing the 12 criteria for a conditional use permit. We had some legal advice.
Yep, so go ahead, Malia, with answer to a couple questions, I believe, right?
Sure. So there was raised a couple of questions about whether or not this event center is a conditional use as defined in the ordinance. And so one of the backdrops that we need to keep in mind when we're interpreting our zoning ordinance is Wisconsin statute 895.463. And this is how it reads. It's just one line, so I won't bore you with usual legalese. The court shall resolve an ambiguity in the meaning of a word or phrase in a zoning ordinance or shoreland zoning ordinance in favor of the free use of property. So when we are interpreting the language, agriculturally related business, such as but not limited to, and it lists wineries in there, and it lists other commercial type operations, and then later on in the list of conditional uses, list large outdoor commercial events. When we're trying to resolve whether or not that would have included an event center that is indoors, we have to resolve that question in favor of free use of the property. So an event center is a conditional use according to our ordinance and the law in that zoning district. So I wanted to just make that clear. The other question that came up was whether or not our new FSA representative on the committee can vote on this particular issue. And so I pulled up the county board rules of order, and specifically under the section talking about this committee, it does include that the FSA representative can vote on any topic involving agriculture, land conservation, and extension education. So this is agriculturally zoned and a potential use outside of traditional agriculture. So I would opine that yes, he is entitled to vote. He's not obligated to vote on this issue. And also considering that we're missing one of the members, Supervisor O'Connell, it would be appropriate again to invite him to vote on this. I think that was those were the only ones that I wanted to make sure that we addressed before he started deliberating. If you have any questions, let me know.
So, Jason, a couple of questions did you have something?
Well, I'm just going to take it as long as we're kind of on the legal side of CUPs. I just copied and pasted some text out of the statute in regard to conditional use permits. And this is coming from Wisconsin statute, chapter 5969(5)E. This was part of the recent amendments of Act 67, and that changed how counties and even towns and villages have to take and operate when they look at CUPs. Basically, that everything that is done with a CUP has to be based off of substantial evidence, and that's defined there. And the main provision that I'd like to point out is if an applicant for a conditional use permit meets or agrees to meet all of the requirements and conditions specified in the county ordinance or those imposed by the county zoning board, which would be you guys, the county shall grant the conditional use permit. Any condition imposed must be related to the purpose of the ordinance and based on substantial evidence. So you have to have your conditions directly in line with obtaining your purpose and intent of the ordinance. And with that, that comes those that the applicant had provided an answer to in the handout that you received today, Exhibit 29. And our office has worked with the applicant and that on trying to address some of those criteria in a possible, starting point in that for a staff recommendation of approving the application. And because of this statutory authority, and that's granted, and that staff does recommend approval based on the following conditions. And I've got a couple I'd like to add today, and that because of our public comment that we just received during our public hearing.
Am I pulling up, Jason?
Yep, the Word document.
Word document
Yep,
again?
and then scroll down. Okay, so one of the first things, and that we've heard over and over again is hours of operation. The town of Osceola also addressed the hours of operation. The town suggested Sunday through Thursday, 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. with a wind down period and no amplified music starting at 8:30 p.m. Here, basically, we just said music done at 8:30. A wind down period, what is that? Is it easily enforceable? We have no idea. Is the band going to walk over and turn down the dial on their amp one notch? And that to say that they're going to quit? We don't know. So very easy to enforce at 8:30 p.m. though. All music is done. So that condition is basically in line with the town, or maybe just a little bit more restrictive. Friday and Saturday hours shall include 10:30 wind down period, and that everybody full close at 12 a.m. With working with the applicant, we have agreed to a music done at 11:30 completely instead of a wind down, and 8 a.m. to 12 a.m. So that's the 12 a.m. deadline. Maximum building capacity to be determined by the public health and local building inspector and never exceeded on the property at any time. So we have this wedding center and the occupancy is determined to be 249 people. That's the max on the property at any time. So if you have an outdoor event going on, you're going to have to limit to 249 people. And that way we're making sure that our sewer system's not being overloaded and that we have the facilities needed to handle that many people. Parking, accesses, that kind of stuff. No campers, recreational vehicles, or tents used for overnight stay allowed besides the owners during construction. I believe that the applicant works in the construction field and they talked about possibly bringing in a camper and that to stay on the property temporarily while they're finishing the inside of the building. Typically, none of these conditions would apply when the owner is using the property for themselves. But in order to be very clear, we just added those last few words there to make it sure it's clear so that everybody knows that's only during construction. The application listed a maximum of 4 events per week total. Number 5 is kind of a condition that we tie to all of our CUPs, must obtain all proper local, state, and federal licensing. Number 6, no sleeping accommodations will be provided, period, anywhere in the building, outside in campers. All parking to be on an impervious/gravel surface and must be contained on the property. The town's letter said that the parking lot should allow proper absorption and drainage of rainwater. No impervious surface, must also be a dust-free surface. I was kind of confused on that, so I talked with Supervisor Warren Johnson from the town today on it, and he had said, well, and I was kind of confused. They were talking about grass, but at the same time, they would say that gravel driveway or gravel parking area would be sufficient. But they would prefer it not be blacktop because of the extra runoff that might come from there. All lighting shall be shielded to prevent a public nuisance. That's number 3 on the town letter. And that, at a minimum, the lighting should follow the Polk County Comprehensive Land Use Ordinance. And that's exactly what it says, is that any lights, and that whether they're in a parking lot or on the building, and that must be shielded, and that to prevent the stray rays from bothering neighboring property owners. The number 9 there, no amplified music of any kind past 8:30 p.m. Sunday through Thursday, 11:30 p.m. Friday and Saturday. Just kind of going back to the town, and we're trying to get, a more concrete, enforceable standard rather than a wind down period. All catering services must be licensed in Wisconsin. That is a Brian Hobbs thing. I talked with Brian Hobbs this morning, and that's his main thing, because they're not providing food service. If they were providing any coolers or anything like that in the barn itself, then they would have to have a sanitation license, I believe is what he called it, to make sure everything's clean. But they're not doing any of that. They're simply providing a table and that for the caterer to pile some stuff on, and then they're going to be doing their work. So there's no license for public health needed as long as they're licensed catering services. Okay, entrance and that's one of the things that was also in the town's letter about installing another driveway. To be able to kind of have one entrance and one exit, have those properly signed. The condition also says that that's to be approved by the town for the location because of the curve on the road there and the sizing that they want to have it. So if they wanted to have a culvert or something like that, that would fall into that criteria as well. The applicant hasn't expressed much interest in having a fire and that, but one of our standard conditions that we put on a lot of CUPs is that all fires and embers are to be extinguished by 11 p.m. with no unintended fires. 13 is the same common condition. Applicant must have a 24-hour contact number available to the public. Number 14 addresses number 2 on the town letter about neighbor privacy. Applicant to install mixtures of trees and privacy fence along the south boundary line to reduce sound travel towards the neighbors and along Poplar Lake. Reason why that was a mixture is that some of the area towards the southwest, towards that wood line, it might be more appropriate to have trees, it might be more natural looking and not create such a public eyesore back in there. Also along their mountain system, if we want a good sewer system to work, we don't want to plant a bunch of trees by it so that the trees ruin the sewer system. So there might be a fence in that area. So that's where it's kind of a combination of both. The idea behind that would be to create that neighbor privacy and boundary line. 15 is kind of our catch-all that we've had, and that with other tourist rooming houses and such. Property must remain free of citation and charges for nuisance, disorderly conduct, and any other illegal activity. So if we get a fight out there and that, we get a complaint on it, that's going to fall into this condition. So everything is going to apply. And if we have road violations, it apply. So quiet hours, just to be very clear in that they're going to be from 12:30 a.m. to 7 o'clock a.m. in the morning. That allows them to get there a little bit before opening and that at 8 o'clock. So that's why we made it 7 instead of 8. All pets must be contained on the rental property unless they're open to public property. So basically, if somebody wants to walk their dog out on the road in front of there, they can do that. But otherwise, if there's any pets there, they have to be on the property. All these conditions in number 18 would have to be provided to any rental contracts that they put out. And number 19 is a local building inspector shall be hired by the applicant to determine compliance with the finished building. It's going to have to be designed to commercial code. I know it'd be great to know maximum occupancy right now, but until things are actually built and and laid out in a complete plan, we're not gonna know what that number is. It's gonna be impossible. So,
There again, Jason, could we get a copy of those 19 while we're discussing it? Could we get somebody to copy them off? And then any questions for Jason on anything, I guess?
I do have one. So if you can scroll down, Jason, to the top, I think it was number 4. Max of 4 events per week. Would you add the word private events in there just to make it a little more clear?
that was one of my conditions that I was gonna add after hearing public comment today and getting the town letter. And that was that all events were to be private and that, or scheduled. And that versus just having public open hours, more like a tavern would be. So that we could definitely make that 4 private events a week. But then the showing, so maybe just a whole other condition that must be by appointment only or by scheduled event. So, yep, so that'd be condition 20. And then we've heard a lot of concern about runoff and that, and I overlooked this because it's kind of going to be required anyway. But I think the amount of parking area that they're going to have is going to trigger a stormwater and erosion control plan. But I would like to add condition 21 as a stormwater and erosion control plan to be completed with the parking lot area and the building and everything, and approved by Land and Water Resources. So that would be my condition 21. Like I said, it'll be required anyway, but then it's very clear. So.
Yep.
As long as, I didn't know what questions we were supposed to ask, but I thought this
And then
committee, number 9,
You're okay unless you want.
at 8:30 Sunday through Thursday. Lost number 9, yeah.
Okay, it's something down the list.
Number 9, we want to see number 9.
Number 9, no.
Can you move to number 9?
Number 9 is the no amplified music of any kind past 8:30 Sunday through Thursday and 11:30 p.m. Friday through Saturday. That's a little clearer than that.
8:30 Sunday through Thursday is a little restrictive. But that's, I'm just throwing that at you, you know, thinking 9:30.
Yeah, 9:30, 10.
Okay. And I'm a little off because I was thinking just the other way. I was going to say, because it's Sunday through Thursday, I would say 8 o'clock, just because it's weekdays.
Let's go like 4:30. Kim.
And there again, I don't.
I don't plan, I wasn't trying to have any celebrations on during the weeks. 8:30 is perfectly fine.
Yeah, and I'm okay with 8. I'm fine with 8:30. It's just, I guess I'll say I'm not fine with going later because it is the weekdays. And, you know, if there was going to be music, I don't care if there's people there, but if you were going to have music on them days, then I think because it's a weekday, all the more important to, you know.
Fine. The owner behind you is agreeing, so it's okay.
Not trying to serve anyone.
Not a problem, it's not a problem.
So just, I think you said it there, Jason, but just a couple questions I had off of the public comment portion of it. Like the 300 max, whatever the number comes back from the building inspector, and the mound system, the conditional use permit would actually not be granted until all of that was done, right? I mean, so it comes back, it says 225 people is the max, and the mound system is big enough. It comes back and it says it's 275, the mound system isn't big enough. Until those problems or issues were taken care of, no permit would be granted. I mean, just because we would say today they would grant the permit, it isn't like they're getting the permit today. All of these things have to be taken care of before the permit is issued.
You know, they have to comply with these going into the future. And the reason being that why I can't even go down the road of, you know, installing a fire suppression system. You know, I'm pretty sure that's going to be a requirement, but it's commercial building code. You know, and when we size our sewer system and that, we need to include the floor drains in the building. We need to know, how many staff that they're planning on having to attend the event. We need to know all that various stuff. What kind of food service they're going to provide? Is it going to be paper service or are they going to provide plates? All that kind of stuff. The state breaks it out for each one of those, and sizes a certain number of gallons for every person based on what type of service you're providing. So that's where it's really hard, but I think we've got it covered, and that with our conditions. So
Yeah, but the final answer comes after the building is built and the number is determined by building inspector.
The only thing you gotta talk about the well, I know there's a well there, but if you put in a fire suppression system, is there anything with this that you have to look at the well? And how deep is the well?
How much water can it pump?
Yeah.
it's going to be all part of the commercial building approval at the state. And that, so they would have to supply enough. So part of the state approved building plans for commercial building.
So could we, because we really haven't done anything on our fencing side of things yet, or nothing official, could we say that the fence has to be 8 feet high, whatever it is? And there again, it doesn't matter to me, just a thought, rather than 6 feet high. I mean, get that.
But, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I would work with the owner on the southern half to say, we want to put a fence, some kind of barrier up. What are you thinking? So you get some input from that owner. And it might be a 8-foot fence. It might be trees. They might just want some more trees. Instead of,
and it is. I mean, it is a mixture of trees and fence on the. Because, like you said, by the mound system, you don't want trees growing into it. So a fence is.
And you want to be able to get that owner's input, because it might be ask first instead of dictating to them, this is what we're going to do.
Yeah. Okay, so you added the stormwater management plan. There's going to be either a second driveway or a wider driveway, right? A second driveway?
We're requiring another driveway will be installed, and it's to be approved by the town, and that through the town's driveway. So if they say that, this is a commercial use, we need a 35-foot top on it, fine, that's what it's going to be. And that if they say, no, it's only got to be 28 feet, fine. So,
Yeah, and that was kind of my question, because when you had the pictures, it's a one-way drive. No, it's like a driveway. It's a one-way driveway, but if you're going to have that many vehicles coming and going, it either needs to be enter and exit, or, as wide as a road, so to speak, to meet. Yeah, Tracy, go ahead.
So, in requesting this extra driveway, will this somewhat take care of the traffic that everyone is concerned about, or does it impose a bigger, because now you have 2 driveways versus 1? And I guess traffic was a big thing for everybody.
Talking with Warren Johnson, supervisor with the town of Osceola this morning, and that one of the things that the town is going to be looking at with the quick trip and everything is putting a stop sign and having this to be a 3-way stop. And that here, just try to slow people down. It sounds like this is nothing new, and that the Grays haven't added any, traffic volume to the area yet. And they're fully aware that they've got issues in that with people driving very fast on this road. So they're thinking that might be one way, and that to provide some safety, not only for the event center, but for everybody else going down too, because they've already got issues. So, and that traffic might be just that much more if we have a quick trip on that same road. So besides Menards. So the town is going to be looking at doing that. And I would ultimately leave it up to the town on where they want that driveway placed, and that because of their driveway separation. Where it's
Yeah, being a town road, it's going to be their call as to where they want the driveway to come out.
I don't want to get into specifics,
Right.
That,
Yeah.
be over and above what they want or under, you know. what they- One thing I should point out, and one of the main reasons that is there's a number 9 on the town of Osceola's letter about a traffic study. And that's why I bring up the statutory authority to that, because there has to be some amount of reasonableness and that to the conditions that are imposed. And by doing a road study like that or a traffic study on the road and having costs going back and forth, and that I believe that that's not related directly to this property and to the use because it's already an existing issue. And it seems like they're kind of trying to hold off one application when maybe they should be doing this in the background and that, and maybe it is a good idea, but I don't believe that it's a condition that should hold off this pending application because it's not related and it's not reasonable to hold this application on studying that whole road. It might take a year or more to do it, and there might be some serious capital assets that need to be invested in order to, fix or, come up with the outcome of that study. So I just wanted to address that because I didn't want to take and just, like we avoided it. So, but I believe that the statutory authority there is going to say that that's, not something that we can require based on substantial evidence that it's needed.
Yeah, the road has, as we've heard many times, the road already has multiple issues. So this is not.
Otherwise, I think we addressed it. Otherwise, I think we've addressed all of the other towns' concerns and sample conditions in these 21 conditions.
So again, Jason, what were conditions 20 and 21? One was stormwater management plan. I can't remember what the other one was.
21 was stormwater and erosion control plan to be approved by Land and Water Resources. And 20 was that the event center would only be open for private events or scheduled appointments. No general, open business hours. And I believe that that addresses condition 8 that the town had submitted to it. And the water management plan under condition 5 that the town had provided us, that would be for our stormwater erosion control plan. Condition 21.
So go ahead, Dr.
Well, I'm looking back, basically perfectly, but I flagged number 9, the traffic study, and you just answered that.
Yep.
But on number 7 on the noise, it says recommend county requires sound study prior to issuing a permit. I don't understand why we would go there.
I don't know what they mean by a sound study, and that I really don't. Every event that they're going to have is going to have different, levels of noise, so when we look at a conditional use, backing up to the general, and that when you grant a conditional use, it shouldn't matter if the Grays are running it, if Olsons are running it, or Rowdies are running that event center. And that the conditions that you assigned, and that should be looking at the 12 criteria in the ordinance, the maintenance of safe and healthful conditions and that kind of stuff, and saying, okay, if they do these criteria, and that use should be the minimal amount of public nuisance to the neighbors, and that's why we have conditional use. And that's why a conditional use goes with the land. And when we look at doing a sound study, that's going to vary depending on the night and where the wind is blowing, and we don't want to limit it to use specific either. I believe that they mentioned in here that, sound amplification is okay for a wedding ceremony, but not for any other events. And that, well, what are you going to call it? Every one of them was a wedding of some sort, So you're limiting based on use then, or personal preference, not on the property, not on the geographical location, not the topography, distance to neighbors. So that's why going on a use specific, very difficult. So
Yeah, and there
I
again.
don't know if that answered your question, but it's just, you gotta tie everything back to that property. So you'd almost have to study sound on their property for, what, I guess
And
that's
then-
gonna vary.
Sound is all dependent upon, is it still, which way the wind is blowing?
Yeah.
Today Doug can't hear the neighbor at all, and tomorrow it sounds like he's right outside the window, but he's not doing anything different than he was, the day before.
That's why it just didn't make sense.
Yeah, no, me either.
That's why I like the very clear, cutoff times for music. I mean, here we have no amplified music of any kind past 8:30 and 11:30. It's clean cut, it's done, so.
So the scheduled appointments, like on 20 here?
Yep.
So open to private events or scheduled appointments. Scheduled appointments are not going to be included in the 4 events, right? I mean, just so that we're,
That's why I was.
I don't know, maybe it's just gray to me, but it reads just a little bit to me like, okay, is that scheduled appointment an event? When all they're going to do is bring a prospective client there.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure we're clear that scheduled appointment is not an event. Well, it's,
That's why I didn't want to tie it in up on the other condition where it had 4 events.
Okay,
So,
yep. Number 6, no sleeping accommodations will be provided. Now, I get it, that's just for the events, but could there be sleeping accommodations for the owners? Okay. No, I'm fine with it, I just.
Drawing or something else, but then would be probably, subdivided or whatever.
Yep.
Okay. The applicant is okay with that. Except for just in this initial period when they're trying to get it finished.
Yeah, well, they're working on the building. Yep. And that was covered in here, right?
Yep.
Yeah, besides during construction. Okay. Any other questions? I guess if not, I would entertain a motion.
So, just, I have one quick
Yep, no, yeah, go ahead.
So today, what we're doing is we're granting it, but we're waiting for like compliance, is that, before it's actually given?
Yeah.
Start operating, yep. And that's
All, and correct me if I'm wrong, Jason, but all of these 21 would have to be done before the permit was granted. So, stormwater management, construction would have to end on the building before they got the permit to find out capacity, and then is the well big enough? Is the sewer big enough? Realistically, is the well big enough for fire? If it's not, they would have to bring that up. We're saying you can have it if you do all of these things that, granted outside of the hours of operation and that kind of things, but all of those other things they have to do. We say yes today, and it might be 6 months before or more before all of these things are done, and the permit would be in their hand.
Okay.
This is giving them the green light to go ahead and start spending some money to take and create those plans, start working with the state, and at that point, they can start getting an occupancy, and they can start working on their sewer, and they can start working on that boundary fence, and kind of tying everything together, because they know that if they take and just apply for that permit, and they've met all these criteria, it's going to be granted, and they can start to operate. So, yep.
I thought that's how it went, but I just wanted.
Yep, and then we issue that permit, that conditional use permit after the hearing here, and that's our enforcement tool, and that to enforce all these conditions. So that permit gets issued with all these conditions on it, and then if those conditions are violated, then we pull that permit, just like we did in that on a tourist rooming house or whatever. That's the method behind it, so, for the mechanics.
But they have their list now to go forward. That's just,
They know what they need to do.
So Jason, should they go through kind of their findings of fact before they entertain a motion?
And,
I mean, just things like it is, this committee does have jurisdiction to make this decision because this is a conditional use authorized under the ordinance. So make that finding. Based upon your discussions, it sounds like you're making the finding that conditions can be imposed on this property to make it comply with all of the elements outlined in the ordinance, right? You can make a finding of fact that the town has made recommended conditions, and based upon those recommendations, you believe that the town's concerns can be addressed. And then going into the conclusion, that's really going to be then your motion to either approve or disapprove.
So we need them first or after?
Well, I just suggested several, and if you're good with that, just let me know. So that when we draft your decision for signature, we're just going to include those.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
You get that, Jason?
So, right,
Oh, what he said?
repeat slower.
record it.
We'll let Jason keep writing for a while yet.
So, the committee has jurisdiction, this is conclusion of law, the committee has jurisdiction on this application as it is listed as a CUP in the ordinances. Conditions can be assigned to keep the proposed use in line with the purpose and intent of the ordinance. The applicant has demonstrated that they meet the criteria listed in the ordinance for approval of the CUP. And then for findings of fact, this is kind of some of the stuff I said in my staff report. Property is 5.29 acres. It was recently rezoned from RA5 to A10. The county board approved the rezone in December of 2020. The property is located 1 mile south of Highway 8 on a town road. The structure on the property was permitted in 2015 as a 4-bedroom dwelling with a 4-bedroom sewer system. The building is 8,648 square feet. Property has heavy soils and consequently has a mountain system for their sewer. There was a stormwater pond that was installed on the property. There's no wetlands or floodplains present.
So how about, do we have, staff recommended with these conditions?
Yeah.
Does the applicant agree with those 21 conditions?
The only thing I would like a little bit more clarification on, because I think we bounced on it for a second, is we talked about the fence, whether it's me working with Tom Williams, or is it something that we can put in stone? I don't know how that relationship with Tom Williams is. If that makes sense.
Sure.
I don't know about going there, and that, if you guys wanted to specify that was 8 feet tall, you can definitely do that.
I think, didn't you
I said a mixture of trees and fence, just to try to.
Yeah, a mixture of trees and fences, and I think that's the applicant's choice, right? I mean, that's not the neighbor's choice.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure there was clarity on that.
That's, you know,
An 8-foot tall privacy fence might not be what they want. I think we can encourage the applicant to go and work with their neighbor, you know.
oh, yeah, I would encourage that, but at the end of the day, it is the applicant's choice if they want trees, if they want a fence. I mean, I think like Jason said earlier, I mean, it'd be bad to plant trees next to the mound system. That would not be a good long-term option.
Yeah.
You know, but other than that, it's, you know, there again, only because it's fresh in our minds from last meeting. I mean, the fence has to be on their property, tree has to be on their property.
Yeah.
It's their fence, it's their trees. It becomes their call, I believe, to, as long as that screening is put in place, it's their choice as to what it is, and if you can work with the neighbors, all the better.
Know where your boundaries are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Perfect. That, at least that's clear. I do agree with it.
I'll save an argument. Know where your boundaries are.
I'd like to add that as another finding of fact that the applicant has agreed to the 21
Yeah,
conditions.
yeah, let's add that to the finding of facts. Okay, now I would entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the conditional use permit for the gray event properties.
Motion has been made and seconded to approve the Gray Event Center. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Who seconded it? Sorry.
Yeah, did you need more in that motion that covered?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I presume
Oh,
it included the conditions.
yeah. Two will go
Yeah,
together.
yeah.
All right. Gotcha.
Thank you guys so much for your time. I really appreciate it. I hope your meeting's not too long. Good luck. Thank you.
It's already 3 hours shorter than I thought it would be.
What did you need? Sign down here?
You know, it is winter, not summer. Why is the air on?
I don't know. It
It's
feels
like
like
rusty
there is
in
a-
our office. It's like my hands are like, good thing my nose is covered.
Those are
Because
a lot of
into my nose would be cold.
That's a lot of conditions. It should keep it pretty well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to put my gloves on, but
In Bull Lake, they require the size of the clothing.
Yeah.
Yep.
Roger does, yeah. It goes with the driveway. That's as far in as we go, just the driveway entrance.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, so they're sure, I mean, if it's flat, it just takes a little water, a 12-inch, but if you got a gully this big, if you're going through, you're going to need a 3-foot filter tape and thing.
There was discussion of width of the driveway. And they decided as a town, can you require a road going in? And then you got the people that just want a small driveway. Their problem.
Yeah. So we're done, Jason?
Yep, good.
Right.
Thank you.
So off to discussion of PTA recommendations, Bob.
You guys cold?
Reason.
We need to try.
Good luck with
Working
that.
It is all the way down.
We're just saving money, Bob. We're just saving money.
I think that thing's been broke forever. That's good. That's a good thing.
It's not blowing cold on us.
Thank you.
That's a good thing.
Hey, you two were the first ones here and you chose your seats.
We just didn't go home from last night.
Yeah, were we together last night?
We were.
Yeah, we were. Well, good morning, everyone. Welcome, Justin. Hi, my name is Bob Kazmersky. Welcome to our committee. Hopefully we'll get to connect and maybe orientate you a little bit. I'm the Environmental Services Director. And are you related to Dale? That's your dad? Good. Welcome aboard. In regards to 9A, we have some developments with PTAG. We met on Monday night. PTAG is our Parks Trails Advisory Group, a special committee representing user groups from all over the county focused on parks and trails development. We met on Monday night, and they have decided on 5 total projects. And the reason I'm bringing this forth for your consideration, if you recall, with that enabling resolution that created the PTAG, there was some startup funds, $50,000. And also in that resolution that enabled the creation of that special committee, it provides the directive that this committee approves or disapproves projects forwarded from the PTAG in the event they want to access that $50,000 allocation. So in a way, you all could consider these projects and make recommendations, in which we'll, as staff, bring back to PTAG. The first project, now some of these projects out of the 5 require resources, and some I think we can do internally, administratively. What I mean by that is I can work with staff to meet these goals. I can work with Vince to reach these goals. And as I go through them all, you'll see how they're all interconnected. So I just want to point that out, that some will require your approval, some require resources, some basically we just need your directive to allow us to figure it out administratively. Does that make sense?
So have Bob, and maybe you'll get there, so forgive me if I'm jumping ahead. Have they ranked these 5 projects in what they think is the most important? Or are they just, here's 5 projects?
That's a great question. That was our intent. But we came to the consensus that we should bring them all forward.
So they're coming in no certain order as you give them to us.
When we did, when you do these group processes, you try to plan for those outcomes, and that was our intent to prioritize them. But as we went through that group process, it was clear to us they all wanted to make a decision and a recommendation for you all to consider throughout that meeting. So here's all of them. Good question. So the first one, this one could be done administratively. It does require staff resources. Basically, as you all know, we have that recreational viewer. That's that online tool for visitors or residents to access and find places to recreate, find trails, find parks, boat landings. It's a very comprehensive resource that Brad Rudenberg created several years ago. Well, there is the reality is it needs updating.
Is what?
It needs updating.
Okay.
And what I mean by that is subsequent to Brad creating that, there hasn't been an annual update. And also in the broader community, like for example, the city of St. Croix Falls, I mean, they've created a number of bike trails, mountain bike trails like the Woolly, there's a word preserve, there's an ATV route being proposed. There's new initiatives at Amory, Safe Routes to School. Luck has some ideas. So there's been these new emerging initiatives that have already been implemented or are currently being planned. So what the PTAG is recommending that staff reach out to each municipality and work with them to identify all the recreational assets. And not only the existing ones, but what they're planning. Like we learned last night, Amory has a pedestrian bike plan that, is using part of the cattail and the stout. So that's an initiative we weren't aware of. We need to get that in. So that's going to be time consuming. I'm pretty confident Ben can find time in his workflow to fit that in. They gave us a timeline. That's something to do by April of this year. So again,
So that's for, what is number one, Bob? Maybe I
the
missed.
goal is to update the recreational data set to ensure all recreational assets are included.
Where do you access the tour, Bob?
So,
I'm sorry?
Where do you access this rec tour?
Cool. Recreational viewer? It's on our website.
Is it on the website?
Yeah, it's a fantastic tool. And I'll actually talk about it a little bit more. I'm glad you brought that up, Doug. One of the first things we did when we first convened the PTAG group was introduce them to that resource. And I was amazed because, as you know, the makeup of PTAG are representatives from every user group. And the vast majority of them didn't even know it existed, which is unfortunate. So there's that piece about marketing and getting that out there, awareness. In addition to that, and this kind of ties to another project, which I'll get into, is it's not phone friendly. And so on a phone, which most people use, particularly visitors or tourists, it's a little wonky. So that's tied to another goal. But I'm sharing all this with you because if you're interested, what we did with PTAG early on is gave them a tour of that resource. In other words, Ben brought it up on a big screen like this, and we went through each of the modules of that platform, and it was enlightening for some. So if you're interested, we could either, present that to this committee, or we can meet with you individually and work through that.
So Bob, didn't we, when we finished the recreation plan just a year ago, did we at that point not reach out to all of the towns and villages and ask them the same question of what trails do you have? I mean, so isn't that kind of in our outdoor rec plan? Because I thought we reached out to all the municipalities and said, what trails do you have that you want in the outdoor rec plan? So
One was mentioned, but I don't know where it went.
Right.
yeah, I don't know if it ever got there, if we ever got any response back. And then my only other thought would be is that, and I guess I'll use the Amory one because they're apparently not done with it yet. We wouldn't want to put anything on that was just proposed.
Correct.
It would want to be once that the county, the town, the village, whoever has completed the project, then it's like, here's where you can go. We want to make sure that we're not saying, here's something that's proposed, and then you
Well, I
can't
think what's
do it.
tied to this goal of this project is the initiative, not only, doing the outreach and updating it, but on an annual basis, whether it's through a letter or a phone call, continually updating the rec field. So there's that piece. Another piece to this, and we didn't quite flush this out with PTAG. I hear what you're saying about the outdoor rec plan. I can't answer that. That does predate me. But we're considering also adding the private sector recreational opportunities, the Troll Hoggins, Wild River. So there's that piece. And so whether or not we put it on there yet, that still has yet to be decided, but that would be an additional task that I think would have value and potential sponsorship down the road. So that inventory of the private sector, recreational services and opportunities is part of this as well.
I agree, but I mean, I guess I don't look at Troll Hogging as being private. I look at them being open to the public. Even though they're private, but I think all of those things like that should be on there.
Actually, Troll Hogging is, because it's such a big, driver and pulls a lot of people in. It is already in our rec bureau, but again, you have to be fair. If Troll Hogging is a competitor or you're rented canoes, you want to be fair, so you want to be able to represent all. So there's that piece that has yet to be fleshed out. So that might be part of this, but at least initially we're looking at all public sector owned property, whether it's a school district, your Osceola, you have a pool, your Unity, you have a pool, or your city park, your city trail, or village trail. So there's that comprehensive need. There's that need to do a comprehensive inventory of all of the recreation. So I'm just sharing that with you. I'll work with my staff. I'll work with Vince and see if we can meet that goal of April of this year. Project number 2. Chairman Olson, can I transition to project 2?
Yes.
Okay. Project 2, this could be a potential request for resources. So we collect all this data.
Which project 2 first, Bob?
Oh, to update the rec map and rec viewer. So the first stage is doing the inventory. Well, someone needs to do the work to create those data files to put them on the rec viewer. Brad Rudenberg has a lot of other projects to do. Brad agreed he could get it all on there if you gave him till November. PTAG feels it's important that this project be completed by June. So you do the inventory by April and then incorporate it into the rec viewer platform by June. That is going to be challenging.
So when you're saying update viewer, you're just saying, you're not saying update that program or that app. You're saying enter data in so we can see all the recreational things.
So there's 2 tasks. You're collecting the information, and then you have to create data files incorporated in that platform. So that's time consuming, and that's.
So when you're saying it hasn't been updated, you're not meaning the viewer itself, the application. You're talking about just the data that's going into it that needs to be updated. Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
So, because to me, they sound a lot alike. So in 1, we're just updating the inventory of what's out there.
Yeah.
And in 2, we would be updating the map and the viewer then and putting it out there for everyone to see.
Right.
Okay.
We can do that. We have the capacity to do it by November. The PTAG feels strongly it needs to be updated by the summer. So that one can probably work with Vince on. Doing GIS is a hard skill. I mean, it's a special skill. And outside of Brad, we really don't have any other staff that can do that. We can train staff, but that's time consuming as well. So that's sort of an administrative piece that I guess I'll work with Vince and our current staff on. we could train, but then that's, there's another piece to that. So
We could put it out and see what the bids were and always say, well, we're going to have to wait till November when Brad gets it done.
well, that's their request, and that's why I said this could be a potential request if, in fact, internally within our division, we don't have the capacity to do it within this timeline. PTAG would like to see if we could bring in a consultant and do that project. We did do a time study with that. It would require at least 40 hours of GIS work. 40 hours we're looking.
For the entry into the viewer.
Yes, ma'am. So there are folks locally, you might know them, that do IT work, might have those GIS skills, that can create those data files. I think, we would have the capacity to put on RFP, see if there's someone interested, and farm that out. If that's the case, if we can't do it internally, I can come back to you and request permission for an RFP. So there's that. Or you can
Do
just,
the inventory, we don't even know how much work it's going to be, right?
I think it's going to be, I think, forgive me for not being able to answer the outdoor rec plan question because I don't know, but the sense we have, at least talking to Ben, because he's already started on this, there's a lot that's not on there. There's a lot of trails that we're missing in particular. So
because what you said earlier, when was the last time it was updated?
wait, I don't think I can answer that honestly. This is Brad's creation. He took this initiative.
But it's been a long time.
It's been several years.
Yeah, okay.
But then, along with that, we should have a plan in place so it's updated more often, so we don't get in this situation, once a year or something, somebody updates it, takes a day.
That's tied to goal one. So Ben does do the collection of the data. Every year annually, he'll do that outreach with the clerks in particular, start there. And whether it's a phone call or a mailing, just, hey, reminder, any new trails or parks or boat landings, so we can incorporate it into our platform. So, for this goal, you can make the recommendation today. If we can't do internally, okay, Bob, go ahead and try to elicit bids. Or we can wait on this, try to work through it internally and come back to you later. There's that.
So we only have one person that can update the GIS system within our county employees. So cross-training somebody else to do it probably would not be a bad thing.
No.
So there's a pretty good chance we could get it done internally.
Well, you have to consider the time it will take Brad, who already has, quite a big workload, to spend additional extra 20, 40 hours training. In the long term, that works. But that's something I think Vince and I can work on.
I think we got to get a full picture of the 5 recommendations, what they entail. There's also going to be a spillover into other things that we have already prioritized. For example, the updating our website. Because quite frankly, improving our rec map and rec viewer, in my opinion, doesn't do any good if people don't go to our website or have trouble maneuvering through it. So I think all this is going to have to blend together. And then we can say, how can we do it internally? How can we do it with outside resources? So that's kind of where I'm looking.
Which is a great segue to goal 4, if you don't mind. Jump to goal 4. Goal 4 was to develop a recreational.
Wait, what was goal 3?
Okay, I'll go back to this.
Because we don't know what 3 and 4 is, so we'll just call it 3, Bob.
Okay, we'll call it 3.
You told us, you informed us they were in no certain order, so.
Well, yeah, but forgive me for that. Vince set the stage for goal 4, so that's why I segued into that. So we'll call goal 4 goal 3. And that is to develop a recreational app. So the goal there is to make the recreational viewer more phone friendly. In other words, quicker access to the data, mobile friendly platform that can show assets, particularly in regards to the user's location. You know, all your phones are GPS enabled, so it'll provide some added value if there was an app created for the map viewer. This idea is going to need to be referred to because, as Vince mentioned, currently there is in IT, Scott Good, our IT director, is vetting, there's a committee in place, vetting a new website. And so maybe there's some opportunities with the rollout with the new website that the recreational bureau, rather than creating a phone app, the new platform, the new website, because I imagine it'll be much more cleaner, user-friendly, easier to navigate. We're going to ask that committee, when they vet the vendors, ensure that this new platform will be able to be mobile friendly. Does that make sense? So in other words, if we're upgrading the website, we might as well make our maps and the whole website phone friendly. Does that make sense? So that's the thing, and well, something we've experienced with PTAG, you know, with their ideas, there's these parallel projects going on internally that are connected. And so there's that. The next goal is branding. And we have branding. We have spent some time on creating a county-specific brand, recreational brand, so we can have consistent signage to our parks, our boat landings, our trails. We've talked a lot about that. You know what way signage is? Way signage is directional signage with a brand or logo on it. They're colored, so brown would be parks, green would be green space, trails, blue would be lakes, boat landings. So we spent a lot of time talking about that. Then we learned there's this other initiative of, again, I don't know if it's the leadership team or it's Vince's idea. We have yet to kind of work that out, but there is a discussion about creating a consistent logo and brand for Polk County. And I don't know, Vince, if you want to talk about that.
If any of you go onto our website and click to different departments, you will see a variety of a Polk County logo. And it's nice. People go and do whatever they want in their departments and so on. From the outside visitor, they come on and they look and they go, well, is this Polk County or is this an outside group? Is the ADRC part of the county or is the museum, historical site part of the museum? It makes sense from a marketing and a branding and an image standpoint that we have one consistent message. Now we could tweak off of that, you know, different things. But one of my priorities, departments don't like me for, but we're going to go to one brand, one county logo, one color or whatever the colors are, so that there's consistency in the message. This all ties in with the website. It will tie in with PTAG. It will tie in for all those things. So branding will be an element going forward that we're going to create instead of mishmash it. You know, you think about the old, what do they call it, county organizer, my role. You know, you had a person who worked, but you didn't have an administrator, and you had supervisors and departments doing their own thing. They all did their own thing. Now we're going to say, you know, it's like when I worked for a big company, you had one logo, you had one way to say the name, and it creates the appropriate image of what you want. So.
So this is going to refer to the initiative, similar to.
Because that's bigger than branding.
Right.
Branding is bigger than just P-tape.
Right. If they want to do way signage, you would think you want to incorporate the county brand into the way signage. So backing up, the last two projects are being referred to other areas or other initiatives in the county. Project 5, this is the beginning of a bigger ask, which is there is a pretty strong consensus to develop a comprehensive trail network plan. What is that? Well, it's an inventory of all existing trails. It identifies arteries, corridors, or potential for other trails.
Run number 5 again by me again, Bob. I didn't get it all.
Development of a comprehensive trail network plan. You know, our staff has several concepts. We've shared some with other committees like the ATV UTV Council. We are always reminded of other potential ideas or easements, county forest, logging roads, other potential arteries for trail and park development. It's important to sit down and try to map all those out. Let's get them all out there on the table. And so this is a big project. This probably would take, you know, maybe a year or two, maybe longer. But it's a big start because, well, we need to address the issue about space, providing space for every recreational opportunity, whether you're a silent sport advocate or motorized sport advocate, or equestrian. We need to find space for them to avoid the conflict issue and embrace the compatibility issue. So, what does that mean? Well, staff, we have the skill sets. However, we're very small. And although we can do most of this work, or some of it rather, like the mapping, the outreach to communities, the collecting of input, PTAG and staff both believe that we need to look at an outside consultant for this work. And what PTAG has recommended for your consideration is for us being staff, to develop a request for proposal for a consultant to put together a scope of work. And in that scope of work, it would include planning, engineering, and implementation of the comprehensive trail network. The target date is, believe it or not, March this year. They're hopeful, so in 2 months, they're hopeful we as staff can bring back. We've already submitted the RFP, sent it out, collected bids, bring bids to the PTAG, have them vet them, and choose a consultant.
And where are the funds coming from?
Again, back to
50,000?
50,000 allocation.
That's not a $50,000 deal. That's way more than 50,000. Do a comprehensive plan, bringing in a consultant. How much of this kind of stuff should be going through like general government or something first? Because it's changing. I I mean, we just got done planning 2021. And now it's January and we're saying, the committee's telling us they want to change our plans that we already have set for 2021. So shouldn't somebody like general government or the executive team be guiding us on, and maybe I'm wrong.
But I think that's where it comes back to, let's say, okay, they've got $50,000, but if it's $75,000 or more, like it could easily be, then that's when realistically it's going to come down to a full board decision, because they've only got $50,000 to spend. Now, when we started this 8-10 months ago, the PTAG committee, whenever it was, we allocated $50,000 in the 2020 budget, right?
Which was not used, so we carried that over into.
Okay, so that was my question. The $50,000 that was allocated this year was just a carryover.
Yes.
So it's still there.
So it's still there, but yeah, that was my question. It didn't turn into 100,000. It just rolled over because it was never used. Okay.
And it would be a start. And I think, and again, I wasn't a part of this meeting, but when we say, you said this plan is for planning, engineering, and what?
Implementation.
Okay. Well, the implementation is not going to happen this year.
No.
In most cases. So the expensive part is there. I think the first part, the PTAG and with the help of a consultant, is to say, what is it we're trying to do with this plan? And then they will help us piece together the options based on the trails that we have out there. Because you all know that the key issue here people keep talking about is connectivity and getting multiple users on trails. So it's not just only, in some trails it's going to be designated for ATVs, for example. Maybe the one up in wherever it is, up in the northwest corner. In other cases, we may say we may want to merge users on a certain portion of a trail because we have to. What's the best type of trail for equestrian? Do we develop a new one or do we combine them with something else? So I think those are the kinds of questions, if I'm listening to Bob here, that this consultant can help us with their manpower, with their experience to say, based on what you have, here are some options that might work. I don't think that would be terribly expensive up front. I mean, now maybe it spills over into next year where we need to supplement.
So is this assuming that all the inventory and is complete before a consultant comes in and then we say, here's everything we've got in the county?
Well, the first task for that consultant, which this is the main objective for the RFP, is to have them come in and help develop a scope of work for the project. What do we want to accomplish? What are our learning objectives?
Don't you have to have your inventory done before you can even
We will
start?
have that, yes, that'll be a piece of that.
So a March deadline is not realistic.
No.
Wait.
So this would be every trail that's out there. And so, when I look at a trail out there, I'm thinking login roads, let's just say wherever out in Sterling, they're looking at increasing the four-wheeler loop. All of those types of trails, like 2 weeks ago, you had the map of Mackey Lake up, showing where there was a potential four-wheeler route, but then in other spots there was, I'll call them dead ends, so those dead ends would be on there too. It would be everywhere within the county that was on county land.
Right.
But then we would need that inventory before the consultant come in.
No, what we're asking, what PTAG is asking, is to bring in a consultant to work with PTAG to develop the scope of work for the comprehensive trail network plan. what do we want to do? We want to focus on the connectivities, the learning objectives, or the comprehensive trail network.
Go ahead, Doug.
I guess I look back here when they reacted. When did I hear consultant? Then I go, whoa.
I do too. I see dollar signs.
I guess I'm gonna
Yeah.
jump back to, I think what Justin was saying is we need to, so you had the Mackey Lake map up last week. So we know where those trails are. We know where the snowmobile trail goes through. We know where all of these little offshoots that dead end in that chunk and in every other chunk of county land that we've got. We know where those are, and they're on a map or close to all on a map. So why do I need a consultant to tell me this one's a dead end? This one runs from County Road O to County Road W. These two are close enough they can connect. Yeah, that dead end one, you can get in and out again, but that's all you can do. I think if that map was there, if the county had that map, I think that becomes a PTAG job. Yeah, go ahead, Justin.
Well, and I guess I'm looking at the whole thing too, because I think every township is different. We talked about Sterling doing something different. I know in Black Brook they're thinking of something. I don't know what Clayton's doing on each township level. So I think if you're going to do a comprehensive, in my mind, comprehensive means all inclusive.
Yeah.
So that would not only be county owned and ran stuff, that would also be each individual township. I think this whole comprehensive plan gets way bigger than I think what the original intent was. Or maybe that's the intent, but I think it's going to take more time to meet with each individual municipality, because then you have each township, but then you have each city or village municipality as well.
But I think if you started with the map of county land of county land, yeah, then each town could kind of jump in as it wanted to. Town of Clam Falls doesn't have any trails on town property, mainly because we've only got like 40 acres. But yeah, I agree. Consultant is a
dirty word.
Well, here's my concern. We can't do all five at once. I don't think. I think first you get your inventory done, you get your viewer updated, you get somebody working on when they're working on the overall website, seeing if they can develop an app to replace the viewer that will work more broadly. The county's going to be working at a county level on branding and developing the comprehensive trail plan come after some of these other things get done. I mean, that's a big deal, just getting the inventory and the viewer updated. I mean, do they really expect that everybody's going to start in March on all of this?
Yeah, and I agree with Sharon. I mean, at least 1 and 2 until they're done. I don't know how you get 5 done. Until we know where the trails are, where we've, documented those trails and put them on a viewer. And once we've documented the trails, know where we are and put them on the viewer or an app, haven't we at that point completed the comprehensive trail network?
Activity piece, opportunities for new trails, identification which your user group uses which trail, and then how to implement it, project schedule. It is a big project. I will tell you that Tim did reach out to 5 consultants in tackling this work. And it was a little bit of a challenge because we didn't really have our learning objectives.
Which work, the comprehensive plan or the viewer?
We just tried to get an estimate on the cost to hire a consultant to help us develop a comprehensive trail network plan. And it ranged from as low as, believe it or not, 17,000 to over 100,000. Those are really broad numbers because, well, we don't have clear objectives yet. And that's what PTAG's asking is we hire a consultant to come in, work with PTAG to identify what we need. Develop the scope of work, which will turn around. If they agree and vet it, it's a collective vetting process where all the PTAG members say, yeah, we want to know where horses should go. Yeah, we need to find X amount of trails for ATVs. Yeah, we want to use this forest land for snowmobiles. The consultant would gather all that data, develop a scope of work for us to use as a blueprint moving forward.
Yep. I agree. It's a good thing. I just think it's something that should have been on the 2021 work plan because something else has to go off the work plan to be able to get this in. And go ahead.
So I don't think any of us are objecting to what PTAG is trying to accomplish, Bob.
Correct.
But when you put into these 5 things, the consultant piece, we're all a little, is there not more involvement other than PTAG putting these ideas together? Could they not be more involved in what the consultant piece would be? I mean, so if you did have to get a consultant, that person would just look over the information that's gathered and the direction in which you're, proposing to go with it. Rather than have them compile all of this, because for one, the people who are on PTAG are from Polk County. They know, plans, they know different things, where normally a consultant isn't from your area, you're pulling them in from somewhere else sometimes. So they're green. They don't know anything about us. So, I mean, that's when your cost gets more, is because now they're having to pull in all the things rather than it just being, me looking at a document going, whoa, okay, now I can start from here and I don't know.
You're right. And that's the thing. I think, if and when this happens, and we do hire a consultant, not only to bring down costs, but we have the capacity to do a lot of this work. Like, for example, again, we're already working on inventory. We certainly can do some of the mapping. We certainly can be the person or the staff that does the outreach with the communities, because we have a connection with them. So that's the value the staff would bring to this planning process, but we need a professional planner to come in and lead that process. And the idea is PTAG would be that steering committee. So as we went through each stage, first the planning stage, first it's the recreational analysis, then it's planning, then it's engineering, and then it's implementation. Implementation is a lot of things. It's really just a plan, is the schedule. 2025, we're doing a new equestrian loop in Sterling, for example, or a new snowmobile trail in McKinley. It's all scheduled out. And it's really a guiding document for budget allocation in the future. So that's the end product. The key piece where we're at right now is to define what we need, define the scope of work for this project.
Hit it harder, Sharon.
So here's what I can do. I could just bring this back to PTAG that you all
So I think if we have this trail inventory out there, and the county has put this, we have all these trails, here we are, they lead to somewhere or they're dead ends. We do not need a trail consultant to say, this one's good for horses, this one's good for bikers, this one's good for four-wheelers or snowmobilers. What we need in all of this process is for those user groups to come to Polk County and say, we would like to put a trail wherever it is. Because we can make an equestrian trail, but if no equestrian wants to ride on it, it isn't going to matter. I have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of my hiking trails in northern Polk County, but it's been pretty apparent over the years that people from the southern part of the county don't want to come up and walk on those hundreds of miles of trails. And we don't have to do anything for those walking trails. They're already there because they're big 25-foot wide logging roads. So, yeah, consultant, boy, that's a nasty word in this committee today.
If I could, just sitting over here, I think what I gathered from this is, one, I'm happy to see the 5 goals that, or 5 areas of expertise or 5 priorities of PTAG. Now that we have an idea of what they are, I think our next step is, how do they fit into the overall county process? What are the things that I can absorb? What are the things that make sense? Would it be good for us to come back at the next meeting with a recommendation, as opposed to saying, hey, here are 5 options, what do you want to pay for? Come back and say, here are the things that we've analyzed, and so we think this is a good way to go. Do this, and this timing. I think there's a bet. I think the comprehensive trail network, if I understand it, is much more than a matter of saying, where do we want a horse trail, where do we want this? It's given our resources, how do we apply this thing in a way that works, that everybody, the county would benefit and the user groups would benefit. They're going to have to compromise here and there. So we're not asking them to decide what to pay for now with that money, right?
No, and just to add on to that, it would help us identify new opportunities, new trail opportunities, as well as how to connect our existing trails as well. So that's a learning objective that needs to be defined.
And it doesn't cost you anything to do an RFP, so at least you'd have an idea after the RFP comes back what it would cost.
So, but these aren't listed in order, but I'll just say from my perspective, number 5 should be at number 5.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think that's what you put together when everything else is done, because
That's the final.
number 5 is, to me, is the big picture.
Yep.
This is it. This is the culmination of 1 through 4. And so if we don't have 1 through 4 done, you can't get to the end of the run before you start the run.
If I may, with the caveat that we've got this group of people at PTAG who come in with a vested interest to really make something big happen. And so I wouldn't call it the 5th on the priority list. I would say that is the biggie. Now, we may have to do 1, 2, 3, and 4 in there, but I think what PTAG would want to do is to say, let's quit messing around with this, and this. Let's start working toward the big picture.
But I think 1 through 4 work towards the big picture, and I don't think you can finish the big picture with you can't put the last piece of the puzzle in first. You have to put all the pieces of the puzzle together before you get to the last piece. And for me, I think 5 is the most important. It's just without doing the other 4, it's spinning your wheels.
Well, 1 and 2 are really just ongoing maintenance stuff that should happen anyway.
Right, but that we're behind on.
Yes, yes. And 3 is a new thing, to be able to get it on phone apps and stuff. Or I don't even know why it's on PTAG, because that's a county level project branding,
It
right?
was their idea, and then we learned of this other initiative,
Yeah,
made the connection.
yeah.
So,
And the comprehensive plan, developing the comprehensive plan, I agree, that's the most important part of it, all of this, but what's the timeline for doing that? That's the whole, what's the timeline look like?
So if we back up, Bob, the timeline for 1, 2, and 3, what was that again?
Okay, one, again, collection of inventory, April 2021.
I can't hear you.
Sorry. Goal number 1, the
Just like last night,
recreational.
Bob, all
I'm sorry, it's that mask, I can't hear you.
Update the recreational assets, April, so 3 months from now.
Done by April 1st, or start on April 1st?
Time of completion, April 1st.
Okay,
Integrate into the rec viewer, June 1st, 2021.
okay.
The branding, they'd like to have it done by the summer of 2021, but again, this is outside of our realm, so that's, the recreational app by the summer, June 1st, 2021. Again, that's all contingent on choosing a vendor and launching a new website, which
When
is
when is that scheduled to start?
no idea.
So
It's an IT issue.
I would say, at least my point of view is if staff decides in the next 2 days or in the next month, we need to put out for an RFP because we can't do 1, 2, and 3. Just put out for the RFP. I mean, they want it to be done by June, so everything here. So just, if we can't do it, get the RFP out so we get it back sooner to get somebody in who can. And then if we're done with 1, 2, and 3 by June, and in May, we know we're going to be done in June, then I think you start looking and saying, okay, now we go to number 5. Now we put out the RFP for that. But, well, maybe. I didn't say consult, I just said RFP.
Very tactful.
Activity, so just, rip the Band-Aid off, Brandon.
But that we get 1, 2, and 3 done before we move on. Not that 5, because I think we all agree 5 is the most important. But we can't, I think, to jump into number 5 is putting the cart in front of the horse. I believe.
Can I just suggest one thing? Would you feel comfortable if I, just on a fact finding, would you be okay or comfortable if you allowed me to reach out to consultants to get an idea what the cost would be, a more formal proposal elicit formal proposals from consultants to get an idea of the cost?
On the comprehensive plan?
Yes. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because the expectation from PTAG is we bring something to them in March regarding this outdoor recreational plan initiative. Would you be okay?
I think we are. I mean, to an extent, you have today by telling us Tim reached out to 5 and said there's 17,000 to over 100,000. Now, when the gap is that big, there's a pretty good gap in what you're going to get for 17,000 compared to 100,000. I hope at least.
We know who that outfit is. The low cost guy.
Yeah, I don't need to know. I don't want to know.
The thing is, the problem, the reason we got such ambiguous range of cost is because they don't know the scope of work. They don't know what we're asking. And so
we have to have that scope of work before we can say.
That's the request.
So I would say go get the scope of work done.
But you're saying the consultant should do the scope of work?
Right. That's what I've been seeing all along.
Why
Forgive
would
me
the
for not
consultant, why
explaining.
wouldn't P-TAG do the scope of work?
Well, it's kind of a long conversation. We've already spent a lot of time on this, but
Hey, I still got 3 hours from expectations for today, so I'm just settling
We
in
want
now.
Justin to come back. We don't want him to.
there's a need to find consensus on what is needed from each user group.
So we're gonna ask the consultant
Or if you,
what we need to do.
what the learning objectives are.
I'm sorry, that's like the student going to school and teaching the teacher.
I would think, I'm okay with putting the RFP out for 1 and 2, the guy that's going to update the viewer. Put the RFP out for 2, because 1 is complete the inventory, we're going to do that internally, right? And 2 is update the viewer, and that's where you're saying bring in a consultant for a week, right?
Then we would need outside help on the app too, right?
Yeah, well, that's 1 and 2. I'm okay with 1 and 2. Then 3, you do that along with the rewrite of the Polk County website, right?
Possibly.
Well, you wouldn't want them doing it.
No, I mean,
Them
I'm
going in
not
this
disagreeing with it. I think all these things, I think we need to sit down and kind of map out to say, what is it we're doing elsewhere? Can we tie them together?
Yeah.
Right.
And then that's why I think we can come back and say, based on what we're saying, here's some things we think we can do now.
Yeah, like I'm laying it out saying, okay, here's number 1. It's going to be done, and I'm doing a timeline. Here's number 2. Oh, number 3 overlaps both 1 and 2 time-wise. I mean, where I get concerned is, and developing a comprehensive trail plan, I would think that P-TAG could put together the scope. How can you have a consultant put together? I mean, we need to put together the scope.
I started there. I really, I don't really want, we're already in the weeds as it is. We started that conversation there with P-TAG and evolved into this. Here's a suggestion. If you don't mind, it won't cost us anything. It'll just be a little of my time. Do you mind if I go out and reach out to some of these consultants, get a clear picture of what a scope of work will cost? That would include the planning piece, the engineering, and the implementation piece. At least have something to bring to P-TAG that they can vet.
Go ahead, Doug, but I don't have a problem with that, but go ahead, Doug.
For you two, I'm sitting here feeling uncomfortable. And I'm wondering if I should recuse myself from this discussion because there has been from the beginning, a little tension between P-TAG and my ATV, UTV ad hoc committee and over whether we're going to communicate different questions. I feel uncomfortable having an opinion on their committee at this point.
So basically, you're asking the acting chair of the committee to allow you to refrain from voting. Then there would not be a quorum without allowing Justin to vote. So
We still have a quorum. There's 3 of us.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. Never trust the lawyer's
She
math.
went to somewhere worse than Frederick even.
Hey, it was a hurricane. I survived.
Are we voting on something today?
Well, no, Bob mentioned that it was taking a different direction and that's, advice is going to go back to the committee and I don't know that I should be advising another committee on anything.
No, I fully understand your point, Doug.
I agree with Bob in the sense that we need to start somewhere. So if you are agreeing to take bull by the horns and start, getting a little feedback from that group, that person, just as a potential cost something to bring back to the next meeting. Then we kind of have a starting point if that's the direction we want to allow it to go. If we need to do, I mean, I just think, I mean, we really don't know where we want to go with this. We have but we don't know how to go about it. So I just think if you kind of do what you were going to do, the process, come back to us at next meeting, kind of give us, feedback on that, and we'll have maybe a little bit better understanding on how to further this.
Yeah.
I think we're spinning our wheels right now. We all have, not saying any of this is bad, but we just don't know what foot to put. So.
Yeah, we're standing there and we don't know which foot to put first. I guess I'm going to say I'm still confused to the point that we're going to hire somebody to come in and tell us what to do on our trail system and to say, here's where they should connect, because I have enough faith in anybody that if you put the map up on the screen, that any of us could walk up and say, well, here's where you can connect these two trails. Here is where you can connect these two. And I don't want to pay somebody $100,000 to say, there's a quarter mile of county land between these two trails. I connect them. I want to put a bid in on the RFP if that's all we're asking for.
We'll let Bob work his magic between now and next meeting in 2 weeks.
Yeah, now, when you talk next meeting, Bob, are you talking in 2 weeks or in a month? I don't care. I'm just.
We're actually, because of this new workload that PTAG gave us, PTAG's taking February off. And then they're expecting at least to have, some
So
possible.
we'll put it on the agenda. If you've got something in 2 weeks, perfect. If you don't, I think that's okay, but I don't, maybe I'm wrong, because this committee always seems to get into things that take a long time, but it doesn't seem like putting a scope of work together should be all that difficult for what we're asking them to tell us we're going to do. To me, if we've got all of these trails on a map,
The scope of work should be part of your RFP.
Right.
If the scope of work isn't part of the RFP, you don't have an RFP.
Yeah.
Right.
So why would you hire a consultant to do the scope of work? The committee should be outlining, these are the 5 things we want to do, or the 4 things.
Yeah.
Here's our scope of work. Here's your RFP. Tell us what it's going to take to get us there.
We put an RFP out to build the highway shop, and we didn't say, what do we want to do? We said, we want to build a highway shop, or, whatever it is. And I think,
And how many consultants later?
hey, I don't know. I voted no on the highway shop, just for the record.
How many consultants later?
This is really helpful, believe it or not.
So,
Is it?
It really is.
because so we're okay, just so consensus wise, because I don't think we need a motion. We're okay with putting an RFP out for realistically number 2, if staff thinks they need to.
Yeah.
Right, I think this is what I'll bring to them, that the directive to complete 1 and 2 before we start exploring hiring anyone.
Well, at least know the end is in sight. We've hired somebody, or here's where we're at, and we're going to be done with this, in June or April, or, whenever it is. It isn't going to be April. And then.
I'll reach out to those 5 consultants and get a more clear, definitive cost.
Well, they can't give you a cost without a scope.
I know.
They have to know the scope of work.
And that's the other directive I got from this is we're asking PTAG to develop the scope of work.
Yes.
Well, and I think,
that's why
we could develop it with them. It could go back and forth if it had to, So, Mr. Administrator, would, to creating the rec app, would that have to, would that tie in with what the branding and everything, or if it's just a rec app, and that's what it is.
As I understand it, the app to access on a phone all recreational opportunities and trails and parks in the county.
Right. So could we not, if need be, at the same time of putting out an RFP for number 2, if we were going to put an RFP out for that, if it's just going to be a rec app?
But you have to be working in conjunction with the rebuild of the whole county website, if we're doing that. You want it all to work in conjunction, right?
Well, if we have the app, then we can put it into our new website, correct? I mean, it's just I mean, we can create an app, I suppose, anytime. We can redo our website anytime. I mean, obviously, that's one of my priorities this year is to get this website going. And we've got people working on that now.
So then does the viewer go away when you have this new app?
No, it won't go away.
It'll tie into the app, right? The viewer will come up on the app. And
There might not even be a need to have an app, particularly if the new website is phone
You
friendly.
need a smartphone.
You're the only person in the world that can fool on a phone, Doug.
That's why you need to be working with the IT people so that they have that in their scope.
Right. And coincidentally, Tim Anderson, our county planner, is on that vetting committee for IT to determine and choose a vendor. I think they've looked at 3 proposals.
Yeah, I mean, I just, there again, all I'm saying on number 3 is if the staff feels as though they need to put an RFP out for it, I would be okay with saying, go ahead and put the RFP out for it.
And I'm in full agreement with that. You can say that, I can say that. We can just do it if we need it.
Yeah, I mean.
This is a small thing.
Yeah, because there again, the RFP comes back and it's too high, then okay.
Yep.
You know, it doesn't cost us anything to put the RFP out there.
No.
And say, here's what it's going to cost. And so it doesn't cost us anything to do that on 5 on the comprehensive plan. I'm just not willing to go down that road yet.
No,
I think the others need to be in place. At least 1 and 2 need to be in place before we can jump to 5.
Good job, Bob.
Yeah. How much time you got off in the next couple of weeks after today?
Thank you.
So we ended up with, you're going to do an RFP for number 2. You're going to do an RFP for number 3.
Number 2, I'm going to try to do internally.
Okay.
If you can, trust me to work with.
Let us put that together.
Administrative.
I mean, I don't think this committee needs to say, do an RFP here and an RFP here.
No.
We're going to put this all together and Bob and I and the staff will say, what is it we can do now? Boom, boom, boom.
Okay.
What is it we say is, and we're better off getting an outside person.
Yeah, we're just saying if you need to put the RFP out, if staff believes it, that's what the direction we need to go, put the RFP out, get them back. Yeah, we're not saying to do it. If you need to do it, go ahead and do it.
But number 3, you definitely have to put an RFP out, right? Because you're not doing it.
For the app.
For the app?
Number 3 is developing the app.
Yeah, you're number 4 probably.
I think we got enough information.
Maybe too much, Bob, maybe too much.
We might actually will bring this back to general government. Teasing.
Yeah, let's muddy them in the waters of this conversation too.
Oh.
All right, let's get on to
I have
10.
faith in your abilities, Bob, so.
Thank you.
As long as you come back with what we want. We don't know what that is, just make sure it's right. So does anybody have anything on Apple River Solar? I mean, my thoughts was just, they're coming in 2 weeks.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think they did a pretty good job answering those questions personally.
But they answered most of them, not completely all of them.
Right.
I know, again, they'll be here next meeting, February 3rd. And I was kind of curious how you want to go forward with this, because again, they responded to all our concerns. Some quite well, some not too well. Did you notice that they accelerated the surety bond?
Yeah, I seen that.
It was 10%, now it's 20% the first year.
So do we know, Bob or Vince or Malia, when does the county or the towns or whoever, is there a date where we need to have this JDA done and signed and?
There's a pre-hearing conference prior to the public hearing at the PSC level. That's coming up, like as early as March. And that's going to be Corporation Council, the developer, and PSC. That's a private hearing. That's the pre-conference one. And then the public one is the 3 PSC commissioners, all the interveners, and the developer.
So then,
It might be a question for her in 2 weeks.
in March, then, we need to send Malia with any questions or concerns that we have. And not just we have, the towns have. So hopefully we'll get a better showing from the towns next meeting than we got last meeting.
That could be a goal. Obviously, they're on our agenda for February 3rd. A goal for that meeting would be to, finalize or at least begin the work to finalize the JDA.
Get close to being done. I mean, because any questions that we have are a lot easier answered when she's standing here than back and forth through emails. So, I think there again, from the committee side of things, and maybe even send a letter to the towns with the revamped one and say, any questions for February 3rd?
We're doing that already, reaching out. So, and that's the thing, when they come here on the 3rd, do you just want to simply go through these concerns again, or?
Yeah, I think so.
I think so.
I think just, there again, just kind of start on page 1 and walk our way through it. And,
Your lawyer will be in attendance as well.
We can have a lawyer
Your
duo.
lawyer will be in attendance as well. No.
You can have.
They're a lot like consultants, aren't they, Tracy?
I wasn't going to say it. I wasn't going to say it. I can feel the love.
Present company example, right?
All right, so we're done there. So, B and C. My theory is that we just, first of all, I'll ask you a question. Seeing as though my resolution is on the agenda, it's already part of the entire county board, right?
Well, I guess you could say that, this committee, it can't die here.
Right, okay, yeah.
So yeah, it was on track.
So I didn't, when I made the resolution, I had no idea Health and Human Services was doing anything. So I guess I'm looking at it saying, I don't know that we need to do both.
You just want to.
I think we should do one. I think we should, as long as it's there, I think we should discuss both of them as one item. And if the committee's okay with that, because they're both kind of the same. They're both a water sampling issue. It's just a matter of, how the county is going to go forward. So, rather than, looking at one and deciding, what are the merits or not the merits of that one, just look at them both together and decide which way they want to go. Because while we can't, if we decide as a committee to go with Health and Human Services, then Malia, this committee could push my resolution to a date certain, which would be after we either got or didn't get a grant. I mean, so we couldn't kill it, but we could postpone it to a date certain. So that's what I'm looking at. I'm saying I don't care necessarily which one we do, but I think we should do, recommend one of them to move forward with, and whichever one,
Not to seem silly, Brad, but what is this based? I mean, what is clarity for this? I mean, what made
for
you?
my resolution?
Yeah, what made you bring this to? I mean, what is it? What's behind it?
Nothing. It's to be able to. Okay, so if I just kind of compare the two, mine covers the whole county. So if you want a water sample in southern Polk County and I want a water sample in northern Polk County, my understanding from Bob, he'll correct me if I'm wrong, is a water sample is about $20 of cost. We have them here at the county to give out. So my position was in writing that resolution was to say, to get that information back to the county, is we would set aside $5,000 for realistically 1,000 water samples to be able to get that information. So you get a water sample, instead of it being $20, it's $15, but the county gets that land and water, Bob's division, gets those results back to be able to say, here's what's in Tracy's water. So now we know what that is. And it's just an incentive for someone who wants to test their well to say, well, I'm going to get 25% off the cost of testing my water. And it's everywhere throughout the county. And that's it. It opens it up to the entire county. And it's, $5 is, or $5,000 is pretty cheap to get 1,000, up to 1,000 samples back. Would 1,000 samples be taken? I don't believe that, but it would open it up to everyone, everywhere, to be able to get that $5 off, and yet it brings all that information that would be gathered back to the county to say, well, maybe there's a problem in Clam Falls, maybe there's not in Clear Lake, maybe there's, and it would be everywhere. Go ahead, Malia.
One of the things to keep in mind is it's not just the cost of giving away $5 every time somebody wants to participate. It's the administrative cost of keeping track of who did it. How are we going to get them paid? Are we issuing checks? Is there a property tax credit where we're transferring from one fund to the other? I mean, there's the sort of busy work on the back end.
Yep, no, I get it.
And every time somebody submits a test, that data is being collected somewhere. Either the University of Wisconsin, what is it, Stevens Point?
Stevens Point, because
Yeah.
that's where I got all my data, was from out of
And it's not just
University of Stevens
$20. It
Point.
costs you $20 to overnight the water sample there, because I just did it. And the first sample I sent in, it tells you to send it first class mail, so I did. The guy calls me from the testing lab saying, sorry, this took too long to get here. You can drive it down to Colfax, or you can overnight it. Well, it cost me $20 then to send a second sample and overnight it. And $20 only gets you the minimum testing. It doesn't test for everything. It was $75. So the whole thing cost me just short of $100 because I had to send it twice.
Oh, yeah.
But the first time it was cheap. Second time it was $20 overnight. I don't know.
No, I agree. And since I wrote that resolution, having found out, I haven't found it yet because I'm really bad on the computer. But so every time your well is worked on, every time a new well is dug, every time they do anything, that's all sitting in a database somewhere. That the county or
University of Wisconsin, you can go right to it. I did.
Any of us can go to and find for nothing, realistically.
Yep, for nothing.
To see how our county water is, our town water is. I mean, because when I pulled up the UW Stevens Point one, it tells me what because nitrates were the big one. They were the ones tested far and away the most for. It tells you what the nitrate levels in every town is, what the sample was, how many are high, how many are low. You know,
I'm for sampling, but the other thing I question is, okay, they test, and the county's involved in this, so they got county in their mind, and their test comes back, and they're high in nitrates, or they're high in magnesium, or they're high.
Anything.
And who are they going to call? They're going to call the county and say, my test came back. What do I do? So we need somebody that's going to have some answers for them on solutions. What are their options if their test came back high? We can't just say test and then not. I don't think we can just say test and then not provide at least avenues.
Some answers for.
Yeah. What do you do next?
Here's call this phone number.
Yeah.
So you're withdrawing yours at this point, or you're just going to compare apples to apples, or what?
Well, that's, I'm just saying, do we want to do one? Do we want to do the other? Do we want to do neither? Do we want to do both? I'm just saying, let's discuss them both at the same time and saying, and then make a decision when they've both been discussed, rather than making a decision on one way or the other, and then looking at the other one, having the discussion about both of them.
Well, we'll leave that up to you.
All right.
We'll leave that up to you when you want to bring this back, or if you want to bring it back.
Okay. So the one that come out of Health and Human Services, Bob, that was it's grant related, my understanding is. How much of that grant, because the one that they proposed is just short of $50,000. Of that $47,500, what would the grant be applied for?
The grant would apply for just the material cost, which is roughly half of the total project cost, $22,500. The rest, which is factored into that $47,500, is staff cost. And I think it should be brought to your attention, and you all are familiar with this, maybe everyone except Sharon. This is Land and Water's work plan for the next 10 years. Goal 2, this is their guiding document in terms of their projects. Goal 2A, obtain permanent groundwater data to determine current groundwater conditions. So this project is on their radar anyway. They would be doing it. Not the same scale that we're talking about with option C. And I hope you all went through the options in your packet, because that is the option that Health and Human Services recommended. Also, this is ahead of their timeline. What they would have done is waited for a grant program similar to this kind of new opportunity through DATCAP, the SEG money that's available, which really is, it's called a segregated fund, but usually those dollars are allocated for nutrient management planning when there's a surplus this year. And so DATCAP is eliciting applications for innovative or creative programming. And I believe our staff, in particular Eric, feels that, this is an innovative program and it fits within the work plan or the resource management plan because, well, even though it's not a typical smaller mini grant that Land and Water would use to reach this goal, it is an opportunity to subsidize this project. And so to answer your question, I guess, there is staff cost. We put that in the final project total because that's a consideration, but it would be a staff cost anyway because it's part of the water resource management plan.
So would the water sample taken or tested be the same for all 4 of the options? There, 1, 2, 3, 4. So the water sample was taken and sent in. Are we testing for the same things in 1, 2, 3, and 4?
We are. And then also,
So just a second then, because here's my next question then is, why is C costing us $225 a sample? B would cost us $75, and D would cost us $65 a sample. So if we're sending in the sample and it's going to be tested for the very same thing, he snuck in behind me.
That's what I thought.
it's the scale of the
If
point.
we're testing for the very same thing, how come it costs me 3 to 4 times as much to get the very same sample taken?
It's the scale
Scale.
of the project. So option C includes 300 samples over the course of 3 priority watersheds within our land and water management plan. B is just one watershed.
All right, again, I'm screwed up. So this is 100 tests per watershed, because here, it just tells me that it's 100 well tests within the target area, but the target area is those watersheds when I read it. So it's 300 samples.
Option C would be 300 samples would be our goal.
Okay.
Apologies.
Well, that
was confusing.
Yeah, that makes the number a lot smaller, like $75.
Ideally, we'd be testing or asking for tests of nitrate and bacteria. Not E. coli, but bacteria. It's kind of a good measure of contamination of the test result. So we would want to include that.
Yeah, you'd be looking for, what is it, coliform, and there's a couple types of bacteria it checks for, right? Okay. Well, that gets my samples down to a much better price. Because I thought you were taking 100 from all, just a total of 100 from all 3 of the watersheds. So, all right. I'm much better with it now.
That's all that matters.
The goal, the response rate was at 13%, or forgive me, Eric. The participation rate goal,
Yeah, we would want to revisit roughly 10 to 13% of the wells that were tested in 1990. So that's where that number came from, if I remember right. But certainly, we're not going to get everybody to volunteer to submit a test. So I think our mailing would be quite substantial within those target areas, and which option I'd be referring to would be the 3 watersheds in option C. I think we'd be mailing out to, could be 3,000-4,000 people potentially. I don't recall if I listed
it's
that.
3,000 mailings.
What was it?
3,000 mailings.
Sure.
And 300 well tests. And, one thing to point out is, because this is related to this project, is we've been going to Health and Human Services now for roughly 4 or 5 months, exploring this topic, and it's evolved into this project. The goal is really to look at, this comes from Health and Human Services, is we've collected this data, but it's rather old. It's 1990, 1996. So really the goal is to look at and compare that old data with one of the goals with new sampling and see if there has been any new trends. So there's that. And then really the motion from Health and Human Services is we pursue this project contingent on the grant award. So there's that as well.
Yeah, question I have. So this isn't on our 2021 work plan anywhere, right?
The Land and Waters
to do this testing? I mean, this is, like number 3 is 500 hours of work. That's a lot of time that you're, so is it listed? I mean, was that one at the top?
Again, this is the 10-year work plan.
Was it in the 2021 work plan?
It's coming a little earlier than we would have planned for.
Uh-huh.
But in talking with staff, it's a priority for us, and we would want to take the opportunity of these grant funds to get this work done. And if it's sooner rather than later, that's okay with us.
So the grant funds are kind of helping it along.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yep, we would want to take advantage of this opportunity because we're not sure how long
The grants.
this funding would be available.
Okay, gotcha.
They might reprioritize it next year or the
Yeah.
following year, and it wouldn't be available for
Yeah.
this sort of thing. So we would rearrange staff priorities and work to get this done.
So will the test, I mean, so nitrates and bacteria are the two big ones, but will the samples come back and test for all of those other things? Or just those two? I mean, you said yours was $75, but it tested for
a lot of stuff.
A lot of stuff. So will we get that lot of stuff back with these? Well, these are maybe the two important ones. If my well is higher in one of those other things, it would still be nice to know, I'll say. So will we get those, all that other stuff that Sharon was talking about, will that come with these tests?
I think it would be up to the participant and forgetting how we handled it with the other well pilot projects we did. But I think the option for those participants to test for other things is always available, but it would be on their own dime.
Okay.
And as far as hardness, pH, things like that, I don't know that we would be interested in that data. We would just be interested in the bacteria and the nitrates. So I think that would only be the information that we would want to ask for.
Naturally, this data will be confidential, right? And we've already been tested on that, as you remember, or maybe we did not share this with you. Maybe we didn't share this with you, but earlier on in our meetings with Health and Human Services, they asked for that old data. And we had to redact. And that's important. And we want to ensure that confidentiality because it impacts not only the participant, but our programming in the future.
So I think Bob said 3,000 letters would be going out, or to 3,000 households in the area. Is 10%, is that hopes too high? Hopes, I mean, is that a reasonable number of people who will participate?
What was the participation rate for Balsam Lake?
Yeah, I think we sent out probably 300 letters, something like that, and we got 100 well tests.
So about 30.
So we had more interest than we had available tests to give out.
Okay.
So I'm optimistic with participation. I think this is something the citizens are interested in and they want to learn more about.
So then those that were tested in 96 or 8 or whatever it was you said, those would kind of rise to the top as far as priority if you have way too many people apply?
Good question. I think we would get a lot of variables. You know, some of those wells may not even exist anymore.
But I mean, you need a certain amount of those in the 300. You want a certain amount of those in the 300. So at least that number would rise to the top and say they were tested 20 years ago, so we need a certain number of those to be tested now.
We would certainly want to get a number of those and test them again. We've set goals for that. I'm not sure if those are realistic or not, but we'll want to test any of those that we can get, basically, because it would be a good indicator of which direction our groundwater is going potentially. So, hope that answers your question.
Yeah, it does.
Once the tests come back, or the mailings are kind of planned, we might be able to tease out some of those, addresses or unique well numbers that were tested back then, and include those in the mailing and kind of track them that way. So I'm not sure what that looks like yet, but our goal would be to get some.
What do you, is it in the 10-year plan then to, retest again at some point or do more testing at some point?
Our goals are fairly general, within that plan. I think this plan identifies groundwater quality as a priority. So I think we would like to do as much as we can with it, although we have not identified, a timeline or a time frame to go back and test it again. So.
Yeah, in fact, an objective within this goal, Sharon, is, I'll read this. Re-examine, repeat, and expand previous groundwater inventories, including the testing for nitrogen and contaminants of concern in groundwater. So they're written broadly, but that's specific in terms of how this project fits within their 10-year work plan.
But it's the retested wells from 20 years ago plus that really tells something, right? Because if you tested Sharon's 20 years ago and here's what it was, now you know there's a difference one way or the other. But if mine is being tested for the first time, it may have been high for the last 40 years. We don't know what that level is.
That's right. Those tests that we have back then are the best baseline that we have. So we would want to utilize that baseline in some way.
Yeah, because if I'm the new well being tested, that's all I'm doing is setting a baseline realistically, if it's high or low.
It is helpful. It would give, kind of a condition of the county groundwater when we put it into an average potentially, but it is important.
So Vince, is there a concern with reallocating?
There's always a concern. But I think that's something that we could do in this case, because it's not a tremendous amount of money. We're taking advantage of a grant.
I'm more worried about the staff hours because it's taking 500 hours of staff time to put, I'm not against this, but are we going to be okay with other things that are going to get pushed?
It is in their work plan though, so it's not something.
Yeah, I mean,
In their 2021 work plan?
No.
No, it's in the
You're just gonna
long-term
get-
work plan.
How about if we say less urgent things are going to get pushed back?
Yeah.
And that's just it.
We're going to reprioritize.
I would defer to these guys to tell me what things are you going to push back. And for example, last year it was a lot of zoning permits and all those things or sanitary permits and all those things were getting pushed back.
Yeah.
So now it's like we can't do that again. We gotta stay on top of this. So now in this case, we have to figure that out.
So if you apply for the grant already?
No, what we need, and this is hopefully, we talked about this at Health and Human Services. What we need is a support letter. There is a limit of support letters. Remember we talked about reaching out to the lake associations. We think a support letter from this committee and Health and Human Services will have the greatest impact on the grant application. So we were hopeful if you were supportive enough, if you would sign a support letter, because again, the grant deadline is February 15th. And Health and Human Services meets a day or two before then, so we're hoping to elicit a support letter from them then. But for today, we're interested in if you guys would be supportive. Okay. You got either Kim or Brad signing it?
Have Kim sign it.
Sign his name.
It is important to mention the grant isn't a sure thing.
No.
It's a competitive grant process.
Yeah,
So we're hopeful.
So when will, when the grant process, when will they be giving out the grants, or when will the county know one way or the other?
Yeah, there's a timeline and it's a pretty quick turnaround. I think April. So we would be able to start on this project this year potentially. And we would plan to do so.
You, Bob, Eric,
Carol, please.
Carol?
Have you reached out to the?
Reach me, since I got
No, I don't think so. We haven't reached out. Well, we reached out to lake associations yet.
For a letters?
We have not.
There's, again, we're limited to 2 support letters, so the most impactful support letters would come from this committee or not human services.
So you can only send 2 letters.
Correct.
Okay, gotcha.
Okay. So seeing as though we can't get rid of it, do I need to make a motion, Malia, to send mine to a date certain?
I mean, you can, yes, date certain. Let's pick something beyond the April date. So maybe the second meeting in May.
Yeah. That way we'll know if we got the grant or not.
Right.
Yeah.
Any calendar for the next meeting, Bob?
We have Parkside Acres, the final plat for approval. I think that's all that we have for zoning. The Horse Creek Farmer-led Watershed Council will present. Eric, you got confirmation on that? February 3rd?
February 3rd?
Yeah.
Can we push it to February 17th? Is that, I believe the 17th is the next meeting. Does that work or
I
not?
thought we were going to do the first meeting, but we can look at the work plan. Is that what you would prefer then? Or? We do have Geronimo coming, obviously, from Apple River LLC to address concerns. So we could talk about the JDA as well.
So if Horse Creek Farmer Watershed isn't going to be here, what if we have, was it Ben you said show us the?
Yes. I've been trying to find it on the website, but I can't find it.
I could try and assemble the group for the 3rd if it works in your schedule better, but I had
In the
thought
17th?
17.
Okay, that's fine.
Yep, that's fine.
So then, yeah, we could replace that with Ben's demonstration, the rec viewer. There's the county forest trail use policy for motorized folks. There's that.
And then you'll be back if you have information from the 5 consultants.
Probably not within 2 weeks.
Come on, we're expecting big things, Bob.
Gonna be big and mighty.
I'll write it down.
Don't let him pressure you, Bob. Don't fall for that. No, stand your ground.
Yeah. Well, you'll know by the time the agenda has to come out if you have a chance of knowing anything or not. So then just, put it on the agenda. If you think you might know something, we'll just skip it if you got nothing.
Sounds like a plan.
Is this where I make a motion, we adjourn?
Oh,
No?
yeah, more. Yeah.
What?
Well, is that okay? Can I finish up what we have for
Yeah.
next meeting?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Should I repeat everything?
No.
Sure.
Okay.
You want to
Sure. Okay. Parkside Acres final plat. Ben's demonstration of the rec viewer. You'll love it. We have a guest, Geronimo, a developer of Apple River Solar Project LLC. We could transition into the finalizing the JDA. We could at least start that process because we do need to work on that. The county forest ATV policy. What about a product from last night? And I was a little confused. It was late. Did we get directed on developing a resolution, the proceeds of the land quarry? Is this too early to bring that up, or?
It's a sore spot yet,
Are you
Bob.
as confused as I am, or?
I think it's first to general government.
Yeah, it's gotta go to general government.
And then they'll
Yeah.
kick it to you guys, so just.
Yeah.
Why does it have to come to us?
Just to rub it in, add a little salt to the wound.
Why does it come into us?
What? No, they didn't, that amendment did not pass.
Did that pass?
What amendment didn't?
Yeah, it did.
Yeah, it did.
Whoa, 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 no, the ones, oh, I'm sorry, what, I thought you were talking about the proceeds of the lime quarry sale.
Oh, no, that didn't pass. Did it?
Yeah.
We didn't determine anything, did we?
No, the amendment,
Passed.
your amendment
It
to,
passed.
It passed.
not the proceeds, the
No,
1.3 million amendment, going back to general government and ESC.
Yeah.
That passed.
I got this, so.
Oh, it did, you're right.
It was late.
I think we better let Sharon control here.
I just know Bob is gonna do the lime quarry, that's all I
I didn't think it did either.
How does that exist?
Oh my God, I didn't even know.
Where did that come from?
My mistake, I'm way off.
I was with you, Vince, because I wasn't thinking it did either, so.
We'll flush that out somewhere else.
Ours water.
Oh, geez.
Okay, go for it, Sharon. It's time to end this.
Motion we adjourn. Brad, are you gonna second that?
Second if you don't have it.
I was saying, Brad, looking at you.
All in favor?
Aye.
It was getting to be back in the back row here, Doug, just like it was for you last night. They were getting ready to go and they were going no matter what.
I know, last night I was even
I
prepared.
looked at the back row, they're putting their clothes, putting their clothes ready, you know, if they want to hear a presentation.
John was ready right away.
Sharon, they're getting their coats on to leave it till next month.
John was ready right away, so.
Yeah.